All right, welcome everyone back to the open session of the CCSD59 Board of Education meeting. Allow me to turn it back over to Board President Janice Krinsky.
Hi, thank you, and welcome everyone who's on the call, listening in or watching. We're gonna go right into comments from the public, and because I received so many, I did want to honor everybody's investment in writing these, so I am going to read them all tonight, but there are 30 of them, 31 actually, and so it's going to take a while, and our board policy allows us to read the first 30 minutes worth, and then anything that's over that time limit will be read at the end of the meeting, and that is to allow us to take advantage of the time that we need to have the very important discussions that we're going to have tonight and to pass some critical action items that need to be handled for legal reasons tonight. So with that, I am going to start reading the public comments. And once again, I made a big effort to try to make sure I'm able to pronounce names correctly, and I apologize if I still mangle them, but you know, it's always a learning experience. So here goes. The first one is from Brian Follin. He says, "Dear 59 board, I need to reach out about when, not if, we are going to return to in-school instruction. The argument to keep remote learning is very slim and is no longer acceptable. The chaotic doomsday scenario has not occurred since schools have reopened across districts, state, and the United States. The argument about local conditions has been analyzed by your counterparts in neighboring districts, such as D15, Itasca, St. Charles, Medina, Bloomingdale, Northbrook, D21, D25, Mount Prospect, Park Ridge, and all Catholic schools. Each district has done extensive research and has concluded a safe reopening is possible and needed. In my email from last month, I asked this board to lead and formulate a plan for reopening. Now I am asking this board to be a follower and formulate a plan with specific dates. If this board has the opinion that you know better than all these other schools districts, then please resign ASAP. We need individuals that are running this board that only have the interests of our kids, period. There is general disappointment in your leadership and feeling of anger is real. I will gladly discuss each point above along with specific examples of how the current situation has failed our kids. Signed, thank you, Brian Follin." The next one is from Veronica Otto. "To whom it may concern, with all the respect and with appreciation to what you do and the level of responsibility that is included in your job, we need schools to reopen for in-person learning. Remote learning is not only useless when it comes to real education, but also causes emotional and healthy stress on any child." I think it meant unhealthy stress, and I'm sure I'm not alone with those observations. "We deal with daily meltdowns, headaches, and irritated eyes due to long hours in front of a computer. Kids are stressed out not only because they can't see their peers and teachers, but also because all those different requirements online. There is no real connection and real learning involved. Kids are stripped from social interactions and any type of activities. It's time to change empty promises from soon and eventually we will open schools to now. No more blowing parents off with empty promises. It's our children's mental health that's involved, and there's a real danger involved with so many hours spent in front of a computer." Okay, the next one is from Joanna Jopek. "Dear Board of Education, it has been weeks of this e-learning, and I would like to tell you that it is not working, and we are not okay. I have 3 kids in Claremont Elementary in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. They sit in front of the computer for long periods of time, and they complain that their head and eyes are hurting. I must keep them all very close to each other due to not having space to separate them, and this hurts their learning because they interrupt each other. They get angry and frustrated because of that. They also have problems with logging into Zoom or following when they're supposed to do what, and they need my help all the time. They are little kids. Since this whole thing started, I noticed that their behavior changed a lot. I'm writing to you to make sure that you understand that this way of teaching is not doing any good for my kids. You say that you are doing all you can to help us get back to in-person learning, but my apologies. I just lost my place. Okay, you say that you are doing all you can to help us get back to in-person learning, but I strongly disagree. You have a responsibility as a Board of Education to represent the students and parents. The children need to have the option to return to in-person learning for physical, emotional, and social reasons. They need to be with other kids in order to learn and grow normally. I don't understand why we can't open if other schools in suburbs have opened successfully. For example, most private and Catholic schools, and teachers safe. And am I still on? We just had some sort of power hit.
No, you're still on.
Okay, sorry about that. The children need to have the option to return to in-person learning for physical, emotional, and social reasons. They need to be with other kids in order to learn and grow normally. I don't understand why we can't open if other schools in suburbs have opened successfully. For example, most private and Catholic schools, daycares, other school districts, and park districts are open. They took steps to keep students and teachers safe, and we need to learn from them. There are some families that prefer e-learning and they have a choice, and us who want in-person don't have any. How is that fair? Since only half of families want to go back to in-person learning, you have less kids in school, so it shouldn't be a problem to distance them. I am confident that you can come up with a safe way to open school as early as November 2nd of 2020. I forgot to mention at the beginning that all of these public comments will be attached to the minutes of this meeting, and they have been distributed to all the board members as well as the superintendent. So we're making sure that everybody has the information they need from everyone who's taken the time to write. So here's the next one. It's from Pavel Yopek. Dear board members, I am writing to you so my voice can be heard. I have 3 boys in your district in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, and I am really worried about my kids because this e-learning is not giving them proper education and social interaction that they need in order to be successful later in life. I don't understand. Oh, I see their struggle with Zoom and not to be able to follow the schedule. They are little kids and they don't understand what they are supposed to do and need constant interaction and help. Due to limited space that we have, they need to be together in the basement area and they all can hear each other, and that interrupts their learning and interactions with teachers. When one speaks, the other can't hear and they get angry and frustrated and yell at each other. I feel that instead of loving to learn, they will start to hate it. Virtual learning was supposed to be an option for those who feel unsafe, and it became the new normal for everybody. I don't see anything normal with this way of teaching little kids. In fact, this is not normal at all. Children belong in school together with their friends and loving teachers every day in person and not on the monitor. In your own opinion, do you really think that our kids are getting the same education virtually as they would if they were in school? They are hurting physically too. They started complaining about their eyes and headaches. You as a Board of Education have the power to let our kids go back to school. If other private and Catholic schools can open, so can you. If our kids can't go to Park District for e-learning camps, if we pay the extra money, they may as well go to school. We already pay lots of money in property tax. They need to go to school and get a proper education. You need to make this happen and let the kids go back to school. Sincerely, Pavel Yopek. Okay. The next one is from Mariusz Takin. Hello, please open schools for in-person learning as soon as possible. My 2 kids do not like e-learning and they want to go back to school. Also, me or my wife have to stay with them all day with no work and no money. Thank you, Mariusz Takin. Okay. All right. This one is from Magdalena Duda. Dear board members, I write to you as a parent of a 1st grader. My husband and I both work for a living, and as it turns out, our jobs are essential. Working in the grocery and delivery industries did not allow us to hide in our homes from COVID-19. Ever since the pandemic started, we both worked, like many others, in essential businesses, really hard to make sure families have everything they needed. Serving our community was just something we had to do. With that being said, our son stays home every single day with his grandpa. We are really lucky to have him to watch over our son. As much as they both try, e-learning is not working. Not only our son spends hours in front of the screen for e-learning, but then he spends additional time on the tablet doing his assignments as I watch over him. And don't get me wrong, I can see the teacher is doing everything she can, but there is only so much she can do over the screen. There is no one to correct the pencil grip or to make sure the letters and numbers are written correctly. These are just some examples of the daily struggles. The other day I had to bring him in for a math test. I believe I don't have to tell you, he did not want to leave the school after the test was done. He misses his school, his teachers and friends very much, and asks me every single morning if today is the day he gets to go to school. I am not asking you to open the schools and forget about the safety. I'm asking you to give us the parents a plan on how and when the schools will be open, to give us the choice to send our kids to schools or to continue with e-learning. We are 6 months into this pandemic, and the fact our district does not have a plan is just baffling. Other districts were able to open in full 5 days for all families who wanted to send their kids to school, and ours doesn't even have a plan. I understand there is much to discuss and figure out, but other districts were able to do it over the summer. Daycares are open, restaurants are open. In our district, parents were given an option to send their child to camps for $250 a week. So if we pay, the kids can stay and play together, but school is not good for them. I respect other parents, and if they feel e-learning is working for their family, great. It is not working for us. We will keep on talking about it. Per CDC website, aside from a child's home, no other setting has more influence on a child's health and well-being than their school. The in-person school environment does the following: provides educational instruction, supports the development of social and emotional skills, creates a safe environment for learning, addresses nutritional needs, and facilitates physical safety. Please figure out a plan for our kids to safely return to school. Our kids' mental health, well-being, and education depend on it. With regards, Magdalena Duda. Okay. The next one is from Mrs. Lou Torello. I have posted this on our Elk Grove Facebook site and was told I should send this to you for the board meeting. I had many people agree, so I feel it must be shared. Here it is. I must say a huge thank you to our teachers. I have spent every day in the same room while my sixth grade Grove Junior High granddaughter is doing her remote learning. I am amazed and proud of all the teachers for making remote learning a success. I know there have been so many negative feelings regarding this. I feel it is time for a positive one. Addie gets up in the morning, has breakfast, goes through her morning routine as if it was a normal day for school, gets dressed and organized for her first period class. We set alarms on Alexa, and this now has become our school bell for the start of class. She is doing great and getting all A's and B's so far. Today were tests since progress reports are out next week. I have hired a tutor to help her with algebra since I am useless when it comes to helping her with math. We are trying to keep things as normal as possible. I do realize she is older, so keeping her focus is easier than little ones, but maybe parents of little ones can get together with other parents that you know are safe to take turns at your homes for playtime. From what I see, that is the one thing that's lacking, peer interaction. What we need to remember is even if school was in session, peer interaction will not be what it was in the past. Luckily, these are kids of a generation that are used to contacting each other through FaceTime and text messaging. What we need to remember is our number one priority is safety. Safety of our children, their families, especially when we fall into the high-risk category due to our age, and teachers and staff. I'm emphasizing what she emphasized in capital letters. By remote learning, this is being achieved. Thank you, teachers, for all your hard work. We appreciate you more than you know. She's got a couple of hearts there. Stay safe. Our children need you. Mrs. Lou Torello, grandparent/guardian.
Very, very nice.
Yep, it's nice. Okay. This is from Anna Nagorny. Dear school administration and board members, I'm a single mother of a kindergarten girl who was supposed to go to school in August. Since she did not go to school, we have been struggling with her learning. I have to go to work full time and I can't sit with her and do e-learning work. I had to leave her at the daycare where she was for the last 3 years, and we are doing all the assignments in the afternoon. I could not find anybody who could help her with school because a lot of parents have to either go to work too or are also asking others for help. I'm devastated and feel very sorry for my child that she can't be live on Zoom. She should go to school and be able to learn her numbers and alphabet and also develop important social skills. Please understand that anything short of a full and normal return to school full time would be as yet another complication. There are many schools in our area that already safely returned to school. Sincerely, Anna Nagorny. Okay, this one's from Jenya Alexandrova. Dear board members, I'm writing to you to ensure you are hearing the reality of the situation and the responsibility you have as the board to represent the entire population of your students and families. The children need to have the option to return to in-person learning for many reasons, but some are listed here. They need to be amongst their peers for their social emotional needs. The learning that we need to happen is simply not happening, from the daily technology issues to kids not having the right space at home to learn well. The teachers, as much as they are trying, cannot do what they need to do online with the kids. Other schools and suburbs have opened successfully and have taken many steps to keep students safe. We need to look around and take lessons from them and start thinking about our plans. If you don't, you are simply failing as board members. Children in daycares, Catholic schools, and even in Park District programs have all found ways to work around the challenging situation. We have the resources to do this as such a well-run district, and with about 60% of parents electing for in-school instruction. I'm confident the leadership team can create a way for this reduced number of students to return to school. I look forward to seeing some leadership from the board over the next month on our return to school plans. Okay, the next one is from Mika Koval. Dear CCSD59 board, since March, we all had an experience with e-learning. I believe that most teachers and parents agree that it has a detrimental effect on our children. We tried our best to step up to the plate by becoming a full-time teacher myself, in addition to keeping my day job, all the while worrying about your family's health and safety. We hunger for a compromise that protects communities from COVID-19 while supporting the mental health of young people. That was stressed in this comment. There has to be a level of risk that we're willing to take if a child's in school. Other schools in surrounding suburbs, including School District 15 in Palatine, that has a little over 12,000 students, reopened for in-person instructions this past Monday, September 21st, 2020. I have opened successfully and have taken many steps to keep students safe. Just last week, School District 214, serving almost 13,000 students, announced a plan for return to school in person that will be effective Thursday, October 15th. What are we waiting for? All caps. We need to look around, take lessons from them, and all caps, bring our kids back in school. The fact that District 59 schools remains closed is baffling. This is not a political opinion. This is science, and the science currently supports having our children return to the classroom safely. This virus is still new, and parents in the community should be quick to adjust as the science indicates. Our students need to be in school as much as possible. Any parents concerned with the health risks or possible inconsistencies of an in-person model can opt for a 100% remote learning platform. However, not all families and teachers share these concerns. Not all families should suffer because of this kind of fear. Schools are where our children run around, they play and laugh and argue with each other. They need to return to that sort of healthy normality as soon as possible. Signed, Monica, mom of 6-year-old Leon and 8-year-old Milena. Okay, the next one is from Katspur Churek. I don't think I did that very well. Churek. That's the best I can do right now. I apologize to Katspur. Dear board members, it was refreshing to read the district's update on the return to in-person learning. As this plan continues to be worked on, I feel that the components listed below need to be taken into account. 1, consider having students attend a full day of instruction similar to a few of the neighboring districts, for example, Palatine. 2, avoid simultaneous instruction of in-person students and ones tuning in from home using Zoom. 3, explore lunch hour staggering. 4, minimize the need for asynchronous learning after students return home. As stated, there are several areas that need to be considered. Although these might sound operational, they need to be accounted for. Please take action to address these factors so that the return to school is a safe and efficient one, so our children can learn. Signed, Katspur Churek. Okay, the next one's from Edita Stopa. Dear CCSD 59 board, Superintendent Fessler and Ms. Wing, since March, we all had an experience with e-learning. I believe that most teachers and parents agree that it has a detrimental effect on our children's progress in school. Virtual education is often a pale shadow of the real thing and left many parents juggling jobs and childcare. Lower income Low-income children who depend on school meals are going hungry, and there were hints that children were suffering increased abuse now that school staff could no longer spot and report early signs of it. It was a growing chorus said, to bring children back to school. Early this spring, school gates around the world slammed shut. By early April, an astonishing 1.5 billion young people were staying home as a part of a broader shutdown to protect people from the novel coronavirus. The drastic measures worked in many places, dramatically slowing the spread of SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19. However, as weeks turned into months, pediatricians and educators began to voice concern that school closures were doing more harm than good, especially as evidence mounted that children rarely develop severe symptoms from COVID-19. We hunger for a compromise that protects communities from COVID-19 while supporting the mental health of young people. There has to be a level of risk that we're willing to take if a child's in school. Schools are where our children run around, play, and laugh and argue with each other. They need to return to that sort of healthy normality as soon as possible. Sincerely, Edita Stopa. Okay, the next one is from Gina Asino. Dear School Board, I have a 7th grader at Grove, and I believe that all children belong in school. Remote learning is not working for the majority. I have spoken to many parents who are frustrated. My son is extremely frustrated and misses being in school with his peers. I moved my 3rd grader to Queen of the Rosary, and he has adjusted well to wearing a face mask and social distancing. He is learning. It's time to open the schools. Okay, this one's from Anna Astruba. Greetings. It appears that there is no reopening plan as initially suggested in July. Surveys that went out asking for families' feedback went on deaf ears, all giving us false hope. We are a working family that continues to struggle during remote learning. I have 2 daughters that are in kindergarten and 2nd grade. Remote learning is not okay for young children. Even though my little one quickly adapted, the extra daycare cost is hurting my family. She needs it since there is no one that can assist her during the day as both parents work. Not only does she need to learn the curriculum, but also has to learn to navigate on her tablet. Because of the added expenses, my 2nd grader has to stay home. She struggles as I work, and I can only assist her during lunch breaks. She complains of headaches each day from sitting in front of a computer all day. This is not okay. She is extremely behind for a 2nd grader. I used to be proud of the schools and education in Elk Grove Village. I lost all confidence in the district. Will you help her catch up? Will you reimburse families for the extra cost of childcare and tutoring? Will you support my children mentally because they are struggling? I'm not asking for schools to be completely open. I'm asking for parents to have a choice, especially for little kids. Preschools are open, daycares are open, the park district is open, private schools are open, all parks in the neighborhood are open, yet our schools remain closed. New York City, who was hit the hardest by the pandemic, has opened their schools. All neighboring states have reopened their schools and have been doing fine, yet we still do not have a reopening plan. Little kids belong in school, and I beg you to allow my daughters to return to the classroom. With regards, Anna Otruba. Okay, the next one is from Gina Katsulos. I want to take this opportunity to share what a positive experience e-learning at Salt Creek has been for our family. There were so many stresses and uncertainties that have come with our world facing this pandemic, and sending our children to school was definitely high on that list. We are so grateful that our children are able to be safe at home and still have the ability to receive a quality education. Mrs. Lieber and Mrs. Petrides have exceeded, I apologize if I've mispronounced those, have exceeded any expectation we could have placed on our teachers. I see my children actively engaged throughout the entire day. The daily format the teachers created helps our day run so smoothly. It is very apparent the amount of time and attention to detail that both of these ladies have given to making this school year be the best that it can be given the current circumstances. We know that the end of October is when the board will be revisiting going back to in-person learning. It is our hope that the board will decide to continue e-learning because my husband and I have made the decision that we do not feel comfortable sending our children back for in-person learning at this point in time. We thank each and every person in this district who has helped turn a difficult situation into such a positive experience. Signed, Be Well, Nick and Gina Katsulos. The next one is from Elizabeth Bezen. Hello, everyone. I'm a mom of a second grader. I hope you are all healthy and safe. Both me and my husband want our child to be able to come back to school in person. At this point, our child is attending a Park District remote camp, which costs us $1,000 per month, which is a huge expense for us, but unfortunately, we have no choice if we want our kid to join the lessons every day. Since the Park District can manage it safely, I'm sure schools can do the same. A lot of other schools remain open, so how come ours can't? Can someone please explain that to me? I would really appreciate it so much. Kids are missing their wonderful teachers and missing each other. They are struggling every day. We all have learned a lesson how to be careful, washing hands, wear a mask, keep distance, etc. So I'm sure it's a right moment for everyone to open schools and bring joy, happiness, and love to the teachers, students, and hardworking staff. Thank you so much. Signed, Elizabeth Besson. Okay, this is going faster than I thought. I'm up to 18 already. The next one is from Angela Fabiano. 1, thank you to all the hardworking teachers, paraprofessionals, and staff. My kids are happy as pie to see their faces every day. I wish the amount of their smiles equated to the amount of learning. It just simply does not. Our family is hopeful for a full return to in-person learning plan. 2.
Yeah.
You just got back to this, that's why.
Oh,
Someone's, Patty, can you mute your speaker? I can hear you talking.
I'm
Patty.
sorry.
Okay, that's okay. When considering a plan to return, I'd like to discourage a model similar to D59's hybrid plan that was recently put out. Flip-flopping kids day by day for AM and PM rotation seems very challenging for both parents, teachers, and students alike. If they needed to be half day, either AM or PM, a weekly consistent schedule would be preferable. Thank you for your time, Angela Fabiano. Okay. My name is Daniel Vnek, and I'm the father of 2 Brentwood learners. The purpose of this email is to implore the board and the teachers union to open schools in District 59 with full learning days, not half days as currently planned. As a biology and chemistry teacher in a private high school of 1,200 students, which has been open since mid-August on a hybrid schedule, I can assure you that it is possible to do so without sacrificing the safety of everyone in the building. Since we have opened, we have had 5 positive cases of students with COVID, all of whom got it from older siblings attending college. Please keep in mind that students walk near each other in hallways and eat lunch in a classroom with 15 other students without their masks. There were roughly 60 students who ate lunch with the 5 who tested positive. All of those students were asked to quarantine at home and get tested as a precaution. None of them tested positive, showing that even if there is an infected student eating lunch with others who are socially distanced, the risk of infection can be greatly minimized, if not eliminated. In short, there has not been a single case of community spread where I work. My school has implemented safety measures like one-way hallways, temperature checks upon arrival, classroom doors always open, extra fans in the hallways, strategically placed plexiglass around teachers' desks, gym space converted into study halls, and teachers wearing scrubs, which can be washed in hot water, all of which have been proven to work over the past 6 weeks. In fact, I was part of the committee that researched and implemented the safety protocols in my school and would love to speak to anyone who would like to learn exactly what my school is doing. I understand that I work at a high school, but I have no doubt that District 59 can implement some similar safety protocols to keep both kids and adults safe. It is much easier to choose not to open and conveniently hide behind safety reasons, quote unquote, to explain why. But this argument falls apart when local private schools have already proven that it's possible. For example, St. Emily's School in Mount Prospect is open on a hybrid schedule of full days and kids eat lunch in the classroom. Parents volunteer to help with supervision. They have had no issues. It's all about implementing consistent safety measures that are proven to work. Furthermore, in my high school, even the teachers who were most scared to return are no longer thinking about COVID now that they are back in a routine with safety measures in place. The biggest headache teachers in private schools currently face is the extra work that comes with a hybrid schedule, but we gladly do it because we love our job and see it as a calling, as I would argue most teachers do. In conclusion, it's silly to think 7 and 8-year-olds can learn remotely by sitting in front of their computers, despite the great efforts of our amazing teachers. Stalled academic progress, social emotional setbacks, constant headaches, and eye pain, like my wife and I are seeing in our daughters, are very real problems. So I urge you tonight to be guided by facts and not emotions. Let's be proactive and at least give parents a choice. The longer we stay closed, the more lazy and visionless our district appears. Let's ask ourselves, what is best for kids and not what is best for me? Only then will we truly be able to move forward with decisions that will benefit the most important stakeholders in this conversation, our students. Thank you. Signed, Daniel Vanek. Okay. The next one is from Isabella Vanek. I'm writing, dear board members, I'm writing to you today because I'm a parent of a second grader and a third grader at Brentwood Elementary. Further, I am also a District 214 teacher who is about to return to teaching in person at Rolling Meadows High School. My husband, who has also written a letter to you today, the one I just read, is also a high school teacher who has been teaching in person since August. As teachers, my husband and I are both acutely aware of the fact that teaching and learning, both remotely and in person, have both benefits and drawbacks. We also know that there is no ideal solution. As a teacher who has been able to stay home with my daughter since quarantine began, I know I am extremely lucky. Now that I have to go back to work, knowing that my daughters are still remote and that when they return, it will only be for a couple of half days a week, my husband and I now need to find childcare for our children and have been left with very few options. That said, I am actually writing to you not about my own childcare struggles, which are very real indeed, but for those families who may not have the ability, knowledge, or access to be able to reach out to you like I am today. I have worked in public schools for over a decade and am familiar with the difficult situations many of my students face at home. These are the students who have parents who are immigrants, speak very little English, work multiple low-paying jobs simply to make ends meet, do not have insurance, and in many cases are simply trying to survive. I taught these students in CPS, at Elk Grove High School, and now at Rolling Meadows High School. And I know that these kinds of families make up a large part of our own District 59. These are the students who need the most support, which includes in-person learning. And I don't mean 2 half days a week. I also know many of these parents had to stop working back in March and are going to continue being stuck because these are the families whose parents work as cashiers, housekeepers, receptionists, and clerks. If we do not offer at least 2 full days of in-person learning per week, we are tying the hands of the parents who cannot go out to earn the money they desperately need working a full shift. I may have options for my own family, but many of my D214 students and their siblings who attend D59 schools do not. Full day school is necessary. Most importantly, I do not understand why we cannot go back to our original plan, which truly provided the most comprehensive options for the majority of families in our district. Remote academy for students who can and want to stay home, with the option for teachers who need to teach remotely to be assigned to do so from home, and in-person learning 5 full days a week for those families who want and need to, with teachers who feel comfortable returning to in-person learning. Trust me, there are many of us out there. I was so proud and impressed with D59 this past summer when I first heard the original plan. I hope the board and all relevant parties realize that the original plan is the one we could and should implement. Please let us not let fear guide you in your decision-making, but your responsibility to your students. This is what is best for them. I urge you to make your decisions going forward with this in mind. Thank you, Isabella Vanek. Okay, I'm going to read one more, and then it's going to be a little over 30 minutes, I think. This one's from David Hain, and he says, I would like to express my support for the board's very difficult decision to continue remote learning. While I recognize that many parents have good reasons to want their children back in school immediately, it's important to recognize that the parents and community members who are agitating for a quick return to school will not be the ones held accountable if a child or teacher gets terribly sick. The school board and administration will. And I suspect that those parents and community members who advocate a rapid return to in-person learning will forget very quickly that they were the ones agitating if a tragic outcome should occur. There is a no win-win situation here, and the risk tolerances of an individual student or family do not and should not determine the risk tolerance for an entire community. The school board and administration have made a conservative decision, but I believe it is the correct one. Holding a public position during a challenging time is always difficult, and this is certainly the greatest challenge of our generation. Thank you for rising to that challenge with professionalism and poise. signed David Hain. And that leads us to the 30-minute break. I did really well. I hope I didn't read so fast that people couldn't follow me, because we only have 8 left plus 1 recorded message. So I am going to conclude public comment at the moment. And now we're going into the major presentation of the evening. Thank you, Dr. Fessler.
All right, good evening. Thank you, Board President Krinsky.
You're welcome.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's meeting. I want to share that all the information and recommendations that we're sharing is part of a broader discussion with the Board of Education tonight to get to a point where we can get direction. It is our goal to return to 5-day-a-week instruction or remote options for families to choose from when it's safe as possible. And we do believe that that's a transition, and that will take some amount of time, and we'll talk about timeline tonight as well. So tonight, the superintendent's leadership team would like to provide an update on our return to school planning, particularly in the area of in-person instruction options for families and the associated timeline. We'll share context, initial recommendations, and then engage the board in a discussion related to next steps in the development of a return to in-person option. Again, we will continue the ongoing option for remote learning to any families who are interested. To look at the agenda items tonight, included in our presentation slides, we will begin with recognition of staff and students by celebrating some of the start of the year, school year successes. We'll then review and preview timeline elements, followed by a discussion of metrics, mitigations, and strategies, local data, and a decision-making tree for consideration. Then we will transition to planning considerations. We'll also then talk about a transition plan overview. That will be followed by an introduction to a hybrid schedule for what we're calling stage 3, and we'll provide more detail as we work through this. And we'll close the presentation with next steps for further discussion and board direction. So again, these first several slides will provide some level of knowledge, understanding, and context for the board and the audience. But with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ross Vittori, who will cue up some celebrations that we're proud of to start the school year. Ross?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Fessler. I've shared before I start each day checking out our hashtag D59Learns and D59Cares. Our staff and community do a wonderful job of posting celebrations there. This first slide, though, shows some photos that weren't there. I reached out to some of our schools that have been incredibly busy working with some students in person, and they shared some of these photos with me. I thought they were fantastic. It shows how dedicated and hardworking our staff are, working with students with special education needs, doing some assessments to get the year started for our teachers. And it's just wonderful to see our staff with kids. So thank you to all of those staff members. The next slide shows a couple photos, and it's really more of the behind the scenes and the creativity involved with getting materials to both families and students. On the left, Maureen tweeted out a couple of our instructional leaders packing up and sorting tons of STEM kits, just amazing resources for our young scientists. And then this one I just saw today from Jeff Tadelman, one of our teachers at Holmes, and his team, who have put together a resource site for families so that they can see and get more familiar with some of the online resources. So a lot of work went into that. Thank you for that type of service. The next one highlights a bit of our innovative nature and our creative way of connecting with people. Here are two examples of the work our LRCs and our libraries are doing. The one on the left shows the Grove Junior High LRC taking books and materials out to one of our mobile home parks, making sure that our students that aren't close to campus are still able to see our warmth and have access to our supplies. And they're not the only school doing this, but thank you for posting that, Lori and Sophia. It really made my day. And then Salt Creek just posted that they're doing a pickup too, like a drive-through, and our little ones are getting library books at most of our elementaries as well. Excellent job. And this last one just really, I think, highlights the caring and creativity, the engaging way that our teachers capture our kids, even through a screen. We know that the best instruction comes from relationships. It doesn't come from any one said tool or vehicle. It comes from relationships, and it comes from getting people excited about learning. This is a kindergarten teacher at Ridge Elementary, Ms. Crone, and you need to go on our hashtag and check out some of these videos. This video shows our kindergartners. Some of them are wearing lights. They're dressed very fancy. They are getting up, they're dancing, they're moving around, and they are just having the greatest time ever. So I thank all of our teachers who are engaging our kids, even our littlest ones, in learning with those wonderful relationships. Thank you for those celebrations, and please keep them coming.
I really love all the hard work that our teachers are putting in to try to engage our students in creative ways. And it just touches my heart in such a nice way to see all those pictures. Thank you, Ross.
Thank you, Ross. Next, we have a timeline review. And before I begin this, I do want to thank our parents for your patience in all of this. I know these are challenging times and challenging decisions, and we're all impacted. I want to thank our staff too for, I think, really working harder than ever to try to make this as successful as possible. And I want to be clear that we want our kids back in school. Our board wants our kids back in school. Our staff wants our kids back in school. Our leadership teams want our kids back in school. But we want to make sure that we're doing this responsibly and safely. So all the planning that we've been doing over the course of March through October has all tried to focus on really looking at the science, looking at even things that are not measurable, but still important on making these decisions. And we'd like to speak and talk through these things. So this slide provides an overview of, well, first of all, we have plan teams that have been meeting since May, and we've structured our plan team meetings around 4 specific areas. So we've planned in the area of instruction, health and safety, operations, and communications. Team membership is represented by staff, parent, administration. This slide highlights various presentations, surveys, and important dates that all link back to plan team recommendations and plan team work. Board members, you can see that there are hot links to some of the presentations. You've seen all these before, but for your reference, if you would like to look at them in the aftermath, feel free. I know you've had this for a few days, probably not long enough to really dive into reviewing all of the information, but you have had access to these and have seen that information in the past. The next slide. This next slide provides an overview of a potential timeline and rollout for an in-person return for instruction option. Again, please remember that all school districts, public school districts, are required to maintain a remote option for families who choose that. We'll revisit this timeline, metrics, and model at the end of the presentation when we discuss board direction. The remainder of the slides will build context, knowledge, and understanding that truly will be foundational for the discussion and board direction. As we had shared earlier, though, there were a couple of key planning elements like food service and transportation that we need 3 to 4 weeks to put into place before we can launch. So again, direction from tonight puts us right at about October 26th to have all those things in place. If you'll recall, I know that we all remember this, but in August, when we approved our plan for return next steps, we said that we would be coming back at the end of the first quarter, which is that November 5th type of rollout. So you can see we have a little bit of flexibility within that, and we'll revisit that conversation. I've asked Tom to speak to the next slides, which focus on really building an understanding around what some of the CDC and the Department of Health and some of our other focus groups have discussed in terms of what are those important metrics to help drive decisions. So Tom Ludloff is the Associate Superintendent, and he'll walk through these next several slides. Tom?
Thank you, Dr. Fessler. As Dr. Fessler indicated, there's a lot of information out there that's available locally, nationally, at many different levels. This are the current, what IDPH, the Illinois Department of Public Health, have defined as county and school metrics. So they've looked at things like positivity rate, incident rates, new cases reported rate, and new youth cases reported rate. Now, we haven't been told or given guidance to say you have to follow these. They're truly there for guidance. But as you look at those numbers, they really provide 3 different levels: a minimal, a moderate, or a substantial area of risk. What we've seen throughout the state, you may have seen some of this, when areas, Illinois is broken into 11 regions. The governor did that based on this current phase we're in. When areas go into substantial risk, let's say they go to 9% positivity rate, the state steps in and starts to take mitigation efforts. That may be restaurants can no longer serve indoors. That could be different things in regards to public get-togethers or anything along those paths. So this is really from, again, the IDPH, but outlines those different numbers. Green being 5% positivity rate as a minimal risk category. The incident rates, the best way I can describe this, that's a formula. What they do is they take the new cases that occur, they divide it by the population of that county, region, or even town, and then they multiply it by 100,000. So that's how you get that number. 50 is about, in our communities, it's about 1 to 2 new cases per day. And then that flows through the different levels. So we've used this in our discussions with the Oversight Committee, the Advisory Focus Group, to build some understanding around what's out there, especially locally from our health department. I think you're muted, Janice. It looks like you're asking a question.
Yeah, I was wondering, do you want us to ask questions as we go, or do you want to hold them till the end?
I would prefer that unless it's urgent, and that we would do it at the end. We've got 25 slides. And again, a lot of this is context building, knowledge building. However, if the board feels strong that there's a point or a question that needs to be responded to or answered in time, feel free. But otherwise, we'd like to try to get the discussion at the end of the presentation.
Okay, I can wait.
So then this next slide is something the CDC released, I believe, a couple of weeks ago, in regards to, if we could go to the next slide, please. Excellent, thank you. That they released a few weeks ago, indicators and thresholds for risks of COVID-19 in schools. You can see we were at a 3 level, now this is a 5 level. Multiple greens, a yellow, an orange, a red, and you can see how those numbers per 100,000 change as they outline that level of risk, and the percentages also. A unique piece that CDC added, which we're really aligning to in some of our thinking, is those key mitigation strategies highlighted below. So as they outline things, they're showing that it's all right, thank you. These are things that every school district and school should consider, like the use of consistent and correct use of masks. In Illinois, that's a requirement. If you're in school, you have to wear a mask. Social distancing to the largest extent, that very much aligns with Illinois. While they want us to do it, it's not a number that you have to hit, just because I think they recognize the volume of kids in different types of schools. Hand hygiene, obviously washing your hands, cleaning and disinfecting, contact tracing. If you have a positive case, can you trace it back? So those are strategies, and they've kind of put together their indicators and thresholds to look at. Again, we talked about this at the Advisory Focus Group, shared this is the best way I should say it, and at the oversight level and in our leadership groups. Next slide, please.
Can we come back to this later then, because I have a comment specific to these graphs. So we'll be able to circle back, I presume.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So then this next slide, based on, and I will say the Advisory Focus Group, we only had a chance to meet twice before this meeting. So I was able to get feedback from the group. I'm not comfortable saying this is their recommendation. I did ask for some ideas, followed up with some feedback, and did get good feedback from the group at different levels. I will say they were about half the group wanted everything in green. The other half was comfortable being in yellow. But from all those discussions and what I've heard and what I've seen out there, we developed and drafted up this as a potential. This is something for the board to consider for metrics and mitigation strategies here in District 59. So you can see the green very much aligns with IDPH. We split the yellow in half and turned a lower risk, a little lower level, and a moderate risk, and then maintain that substantial. We know or believe if the state's going to step in once it's over 8% or over 100, then the reality is we should align with that. And then outlined a set of mitigation strategies. A couple key pieces with this. As we looked at data, this Northwestern website actually takes IDPH data and you can search by local zip code. So the group, one piece of feedback I think the advisory focus group was very comfortable with is that we'd focus in on our 4 communities, Arlington Heights, Mount Prospect, Des Plaines, and Elk Grove Village, and get really local data so we know what's going on in where our schools are. And then we also thought that 14-day time period, so they're collecting the data every day and have a rolling 14-day and they have a rolling 7. We thought the 14-day made sense as we looked at that data within these recommendations. I will tell you that data changes actually throughout the day. Right now in our 4 communities, when you combine them all together, our positivity rate is at 3.52%. And the incident rate is at 75.3. So you could see we'd be in the green in the positivity rate, and we'd be in the darker or moderate yellow on the incident rate side locally. And we know we have staff across many, many different communities, but almost 40% of our staff do live in our 4 communities. Then the next piece, we've been doing a lot of research at what local school districts are doing, what metrics they're using. I will say this is based on what's available, what we can find online or learn ourselves through our colleagues or sometimes parents. 214, I can't find that October 15th on the website, but I know parents got that email, so I added it in there. But these are what local districts are doing. So District 214 has a 4-stage plan. And then they're looking at incident rates, I believe for Cook County, when they look at their potential to return. I believe that letter that went out said that even though I believe at that time the incident rates were over 70, the more recent ones they had looked at were under 70. So they're looking to return to partially flexible in-person remote learning starting October 15th. District 15 actually a week ago today started with kindergarten and self-contained special ed programs. Today, I believe grades K1, 1st and 2nd started, and they have a plan rolling things forward. At least how I read and see their plan, they've outlined these are the variables that could cause us to maybe stop in person at or exceeding 8% positivity rate or being over 100 on the incident rate side. District 21, I believe just last Thursday approved a plan that has them coming back to October 5th. They're using incident rates between 7 and 97 for their zip codes. They're using that Northwestern site also. And then as I should have mentioned, District 214 and many of the local districts, including 21, are then looking at internal data. Do we have a building that has more than 3% positivity rate? Can we staff at 85% in our buildings and those types of things? The next item, District 25, I believe they've moved to step 3 of their hybrid 2 days per week plan that will begin on October 12th with kindergarten 1st, 5th, and 6th, and then all grades to follow the following week. District 54, I think we just learned this today, is looking at an October 19th return, full days, but an A-B schedule. As far as I know, I haven't, and there's no doubt if it says NA, there's no rates that I know of right now, but I'm absolutely sure they're looking at different rates, incident rates and positivity rates. They're just not published or out yet. District 57 is considering a hybrid return on November 9th. They went over that with their board last week. Also looking at similar metrics, I think the way they defined it as 214 or other local districts, not exactly sure which ones. District 62 starts, I believe, on Wednesday. Not aware of the metrics they're looking to focus on. I couldn't find them. Again, I'm sure they have them. They're starting with preschool, kindergarten, 1st and 6th, and then moving on through other grade levels over the course of the next 3 weeks. And then District 63 right now, they're going to look at their metrics on October 1st. They're considering a hybrid phase-in approach, and they're going to use positivity rates for the area. I believe for Region 10, or it could be Cook County. And so they're looking at those rates to start their return. So then as we've gone through these discussions, we've identified different steps. We're currently in step 2. You know, and I apologize, we've tried to find the right language. There's phases, there's stages, there's steps. We're going to use steps in regards to our status. We're in step 2, where some students have returned for in-person instruction. A majority are in remote. We have those kids, some of our special ed programs, kids are coming up to 4 days a week, 2.5 hours a day. And other kids have come in for testing. We're providing a lot of services in person. As we look to step 3, that's a hybrid model, 2 days per week for a group A and a group B. We're looking at 3.5 to 4 hours of in-person instruction, and obviously a remote option to go with that. Then as we look at step 4, that would be 4 days of in-person per week and a remote option. So any students in person would come 4 days a week. Again, we're looking at what would that time look like. I should highlight the lunch service piece. At least in step 3, we're not looking to serve lunch at all. At school, it would be more of a grab and go as kids left for the day. And then a full 5-day in-person with remote option would be step 5. And again, we'd have to determine how many hours a day and the lunch service piece connected to that. If I could just quickly highlight the considerations, while we would talk about those health metrics, zip code positivity rate, incident rates, you know, we are getting guidance from ISBE and IDPH. The governor has, as we know, stepped in at times. Very clearly, we have to see we heard a lot of in the comments tonight, what other local districts are doing. And then some things along with those mitigation strategies. Can we staff it, whatever our model is? And then what does it look like in buildings in regards to COVID cases for students and staff? You know, we've been back for 7 weeks as a staff. You know, some our staff have accommodations and are not in the buildings, but at least as far as I'm aware, I think we've had 6 positive cases within the district out of 7, almost 800 staff, none connected to transmission at work. It came from home, and our system has worked really well, and people have communicated that on. So, but that obviously would be something we'd want to watch closely in our buildings if you started to see a rise in positive cases. So then, as Dr. Fessler indicated, we had some interest from board members to draft up a decision tree. So same steps that were just outlined, and then trying to highlight some considerations, either internal or those positivity rates. Again, these aren't the have-tos. This is what we've identified as potential options. So we look at step 3 right now, we're within both of those. The positivity rate, as of today, I think I said it was 3.52, and the incident rate at 75.3, where we could return if this was adopted for the 2-day-a-week hybrid piece. If you look at the 4-day, then we drop that down to now we want to be at least under 6.4 and under or up to 70. And again, these could be adjusted and look different, but to get back to full, I think we're looking at green, at least according to what we've shared so far, less than 5% and 50 or less.
So this will be an area a little later that we absolutely want to talk to the board and have a discussion around, you know, step 3, step 4, step 5, and comfort level with these 2 metrics. Of course, the internal considerations on the right that Tom has already mentioned before are also important factors that weigh into making a decision to go to 4- and 5-day transitions.
So as Dr. Fessler mentioned earlier, we have a number of planning teams that have been working really since early May of last year, throughout the summer, this fall, really working on gathering information, research, getting feedback, and further developing our plan. So I'm going to turn over to Dr. Katie Ossel, and she's going to share some additional information on health and safety.
Thank you, Tom.
as Tom has mentioned tonight, there are several mitigation strategies that when we apply simultaneously help prevent the spread of illness. And so we have considered many of those mitigation strategies in our return to school planning. Tonight, I plan to highlight 3 of them, which in addition to face coverings, which really has been all over as the strongest mitigation strategies, we find that these are very strong in nature as well. And those are social distancing, self-certification of symptoms, and how we respond to illnesses. So I'm going to start with space estimates. In order to start thinking about social distancing and our ability to socially distance in our schools, we did a quick study of the spaces that we have and estimated approximately how many people could be in a room with social distancing in place. So we took a system from EdWeek. They provided an algorithm to determine the amount of people that would be able to fit in one space. We also received our average room sizes from our custodial staff at each building, and use that EdWeek social distancing calculator to determine the average people per space if we were to socially distance. So we estimate that within the majority of our classrooms, that would be around 14 to 16 people with social distancing in place. Now, we also have to account for furniture in the room. We do have different size rooms. Some are larger, some are smaller. So there are differences in our buildings and there are differences in our class sizes. And this is a starting place. We can also really go down a rabbit hole of measuring, are we measuring seat to seat or desk to desk, or how exactly is that happening? So again, this is a starting place for us to be thinking about approximately how many people do we foresee being able to safely social distance within our classrooms. And that is, again, one of the mitigation strategies that we are going to apply to many others to try to prevent the spread of illness in our schools when we're in in-person instruction.
I think it's also important to note on this slide that we're defining social distancing as 3 to 6 feet. Understanding, as Katie said, that it's critical that we have masks, and that mitigates the spread and is a very important piece. Please keep in mind, in the Illinois Restore Phase 4 plan that the governor rolled out, he indicated that school districts could have up to 50 people in a classroom, and that they should be physically, or they should be spaced as best as possible. So the guideline for that was extremely loose. We absolutely do not feel that is safe by any means, but I want you to be aware that that is Phase 4 Illinois Restore planning. Again, 50 people with social distancing. We're going to significantly stay away from that. We're really trying to commit to that 14 to 16 whenever possible, understanding in some of our classrooms it could be a little larger. Some of this will also be dependent on parent registration, and we'll get into that in a few minutes.
So likewise, ISB has recommended no more than 50 feet per space. We're trying to go really well above and beyond that minimum expectation and do the same with our self-certification procedures. So at our last board meeting, we talked a little bit about self-certification. I have additional information to present to you tonight so you have an idea of how this will work. So right now, ISB requires that staff and students either self-certify that they're symptom-free and have not been a close contact to someone who is confirmed to have COVID-19, or that they complete a symptom screening and temperature check prior to entering the building. So it's one or the other as required by ISB. CDC actually warns against symptom screening and temperature checks as a universal strategy because most students who have COVID-19 actually don't exhibit fevers. And so that's not always a great tell of whether they're ill or not. And they do recommend that we rely on parents knowing their children and knowing when they're well and when they're ill to certify to us if they are potentially symptomatic and need to be home. This process does heavily rely on our partnership with families to make sure that families are keeping kids home when they are ill and that they are completing that self-certification each day. So we're looking into a system a tool by Qualtrics that really tries to take the logistical complications of self-certification out of the picture for us. So some of the things that it does that can be really helpful is, first and foremost, it directly emails parents each night with the self-certification survey. So each parent will get that email. It's time to self-certify. Please check your children for symptoms, complete the 2 questions, and parents can click the link complete and send it in. It also then automatically generates a list of parents who have not completed it the morning of school and sends them a reminder first thing in the morning. You've not completed your self-certification. Please complete it at this time with the direct link. So that takes a lot of work out of the picture for our staff and our administrators, as they're not trying to track down. There's already a reminder sent for them to any parents who have forgotten to complete that certification the night before. Those 2 questions that will be asked are, does your child have any of the following symptoms, which would include a fever? And has your child been in close contact with anyone who has been confirmed positive for COVID-19, using the IDPH definition? So the other advantages here are in the reporting process. So once parents have completed that self-certification, we can set a time, and the Qualtrics tool will send us the report of who has it completed and who does not. Part of the challenge of this is making sure that we are intercepting any students who don't have it completed, so that they can then do their temperature check and symptom screening before they come in the building. So in this case, our staff who we designate could get a report of the kids who have not yet self-certified, so that we can intercept them and make sure that we do take their temperatures and screen them for symptoms upon arrival. We can also really customize that for certain locations. So as we create our entry plans, we know we want to utilize many doors of our buildings so that we don't have overcrowding happening anywhere. And we would be able to even send reports by doors. So here's the door 1 report, the door 2 report, which really cuts down for our staff the number of kids that they would need to locate and make sure proceed with their symptom screening. So those are the advantages to that plan and how we see that working. Again, for our parents, it's extremely important that they complete this piece. They know their child best and when they may be feeling well or not. And so that will be a really key piece to the process. But again, that's one of many mitigation strategies. So the self-certification is not going to give us 100% accuracy, but when we pair it with face coverings and we pair it with social distancing and we pair it with how we respond to illness, that's when we really are mitigating any risk. The last piece that I want to speak to tonight is our communication structures. So if we do have a positive case, we've really mapped out very clear communication procedures and how we will respond to that. So the first thing that would happen is we'd get the report of the positive case. And that might be from a staff member, it might be from a parent, it might be from the local health department. But upon receipt, the knowledge that we have a positive case of COVID-19, the first thing that we're going to do is make sure that that person is in fact home and isolated. A nurse or an administrator would follow up with them to make sure that they have what they need to take care of themselves, that they know their next steps, that they have information if needed, and that they're coordinating with a medical provider. Then the next step will be the nurse and school administrator, possibly in coordination with the local health department, are going to identify close contacts. So as a reminder, a close contact per IDPH is someone who has been within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more over the course of a day. And we're looking at 2 days prior to the onset of symptoms or 2 days prior to testing for an asymptomatic person. So we are looking for those close contacts, and those people would be notified immediately by school staff. So they're going to get a phone call. We're going to locate them in the building. We're going to immediately say you are a close contact or could potentially be a close contact and need to quarantine and work through that process. We're also going to immediately notify custodians in the building in case there are any spaces that need to be closed off and properly disinfected. Then the next step will be notifying students, staff, or families in affected classes. So if there's a change in-person instruction to remote instruction because there's a need to quarantine. That would be the next stage of communications that go out so that those families know what will happen in the next days. Now that may be close contacts within a class. If there are lots of close contacts, it could be the whole class. And we'll need to really think through those decisions and what makes the most sense and what is going to be feasible for instruction to be continuous. And then finally, information that a positive case exists will then go out to the affected school, to the building staff, and to the families at that school, that there has been a positive case of COVID-19, that close contacts have already been notified, and information on how they can continue to monitor their own wellness. So those are the communication structures for if there is a positive case. Now, if there is a symptomatic person or someone who's a close contact, those are a little bit different because IDPH has said clearly that we are to notify close contacts and the school community as we do other communicable diseases. So again, 3 main mitigation strategies. We talked about how we respond to illness, our social distancing, and our self-certification processes. And those are in addition to many, many more mitigation strategies, the most important being adherence to wearing face coverings in our schools.
Katie, can you speak to the resource at the bottom real quick?
Absolutely. So at the bottom of this page, there's a link to communication and mitigation strategies. That is a document that outlines the communication steps that I just talked through. So it has this chart on it with much more detail about how that communication works and what that process is once we know that there is a confirmed positive case in one of our buildings. And then it also goes on to explain how we define close contact, what data we're looking at in terms of absences, what data we collect as a district for any positive cases or staff who are in quarantine, students who are in quarantine, and how we are continuing to monitor those things so that we can take appropriate steps and action as needed. There are lots of mitigation strategies that start very preventatively, and as we continue to work through them, become very responsive in nature. And so we've outlined all of those pieces, knowing that we will need to adapt and adjust as we go to make sure that we are mitigating as much risk as possible.
Katie, where can the general public find this resource?
That is part of our return to school plan. So we've added some updates very recently to our health pieces, that being one of them. So I would visit the return to school plan for 2021.
And that link can be found on our landing page. So anyone who goes to CCSD59.org, we have a landing page with access to our parent resources for COVID-19. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
All right, next, Ross Vittori, our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, and Ron O'Connor, our Assistant Superintendent for Finance, will talk through operation.
I will briefly review some of these items that we already have shared, and then Ron and I will go into further detail on a couple items. We have been working on meal distribution, potential childcare transportation. We're working with the union leadership on MOUs so that we can bring more support to all of our staff. We're working with staff on different types of accommodations, ADA accommodations, Family First, looking at temporary postings for staff, and also starting to prepare for our staffing needs when we switch from a full remote to a hybrid. But I will turn it over to Ron O'Connor next, who can speak a little bit more about food service and transportation.
Thank you, Ross. So for food service, Organic Life has assisted us with implementing what they call the Summer Food Service Program, which is a government program. It allows every District 59 student to receive free meals. Under normal circumstances, some of our students would have to apply for aid in order to be eligible. But the U.S. Department of Agriculture has extended the Summer Food Service Program through December 31st of 2020, which means every one of our children are eligible for this. In our current return to in-person programming, the district is looking at different models to distribute meals to our students. During the day, we are investigating the possibility of providing snacks to students during mask breaks. This allows for minimal time with masks off and a time for an approved snack during the day. It would look shorter than a traditional lunch schedule, but we're continuing with the same approach for meal service for students and families who choose to continue it in remote learning. As a reminder, Organic Life is requesting at least 3 weeks of notification prior to start for staffing and preparation, as they have with other districts, and they are ready to work with us when possible. As for transportation, our bus companies, they continue to require that all drivers and passengers wear a mask. Both transportation services will not allow anyone on the bus without that mask. We plan for students to board buses with seating filling up first at the back, and then they would fill up to the front so that they don't walk going to each other's areas or areas of breathing. The buses will then unload starting at the front of the bus going first and then to the back. The district is working on a plan to staff every route with an aide to monitor the students and to ensure that masks will stay on. Transportation companies are now finalizing planning for multiple districts, which does create a challenge with staffing and requests to prepare for various schedule changes. The transportation companies, again, will need 1 month of preparation. And I'll turn it back to Mr. Vittori.
Thank you. One of the items I mentioned was an updated survey we asked staff to complete to get us ready for that return to large groups of students or larger groups of students coming to school. Here is some of that data that is coming in. It's made up of 710 school-based staff members. So these are all individuals that would work at the schools. And you can see we have very few people on actual leaves of absence. We have some individuals who are working remotely due to an ADA accommodation. We have 2 groups that I have put together. These are family first individuals or accommodations because of childcare due to COVID. And some of that is intermittent, meaning that they can come to work on Monday and Tuesday, but then they are without childcare the rest of the week. So I put those together. And then you can see we're in the 85% area for staff that are currently at work and are anticipating being at work as we move forward. So that is a really nice celebration. And not just the 85%, all of those items. Our staff are working really hard and putting forth a great effort to be around their resources, to be at work on campus for our kids.
Ross, I'm sorry for the interruption. This is Janice Krinsky. Could you explain again what the blue and what the green represent?
Absolutely, thank you. So we prepared, we surveyed staff and tried to prepare our staffing prior to the school year starting. And when we were looking at going into remote, so the last few weeks, the beginning of the school year, 89.3% of our staff are currently at work. So that would be the blue for at school. And when we have larger groups of students coming, that number is only going to change a little bit. So we know some ADA accommodations, for example, staff can come to work as long as there aren't large groups of people. But once larger groups of people come, their doctors are saying they can't be here. So we didn't want to assume that our current staffing status would remain the same. So we reached out to staff and asked some questions in regards to what are you currently doing and what do you anticipate when we start moving to groups of students coming. So you can see it looks pretty good, but I want to be very transparent in a few things that all of our neighboring districts are noticing when I meet with my HR network. So while this is a celebration, there are some potential realities that we have to remember. And that is mostly that this is such a fluid situation. So for example, we have a staff member who is currently at work and their child is at preschool in a local Elk Grove preschool. So they don't need any accommodations, but they reached out to us today because their school is quarantining the daycare where their child is going to be quarantining for 2 weeks. So now that person moves into that other category of needing a remote accommodation. Also, like neighboring districts. There's other quarantining, someone's sick. Things can be very fluid, and that dramatically can impact how we are covering our classes. And of course, there's a bit of a domino effect. So neighboring districts, for example, if something were to impact District 59, that's going to impact the districts around us where their employees may live. So we will continue to monitor this, but we are looking at different types of ways to cover classrooms, and then how we can try to maintain as much as possible consistency. And we have heard loud and clear from families and staff that those relationships I mentioned when we were starting the meeting with celebrations, we want to keep our kids with their current teachers. We don't want to be moving people around if we don't have to. But we also have to look at some of these things that are out of our control and how they might impact our numbers. One last point real quickly, just to put some perspective around percentages. That 7.2% of staff that are currently working at home because of an accommodation, for 700 individuals, that's about 50 people. So if half of those 50 are teachers in some of our specialized programs, it's extra difficult to find coverage for some of those classrooms, whether that's special education, early childhood, dual language. So 7% looks great, but for me, I also worry because that's still 50 individuals, and that's a lot of coverage to try to find for our amazing diverse programming. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. The next portion of the presentation is instruction focused, and in this section, we'll get to the conversation around model. As Ross indicated when he started, much of this is fluid, and please keep in mind that our plan teams have looked at and examined every possible model or scenario. So, we have the ability to be fluid as well in terms of our approach. But through the plan team conversations and really narrowing down the challenges and looking at what might be best for our students, staff, and families, during this portion, we will discuss some recommendations, and then in the aftermath, have a discussion and then look for some clarity and direction from the board. So Maureen McAbee, Assistant Superintendent for Instruction, has been facilitating the instruction plan team and will walk through some of the instruction planning, some of the model work, and then some of the recommendations that we'd like to discuss with the board. Maureen?
Okay, thank you very much. So as you can see, we had these really important considerations as our plan team was looking at different models that are out there and evaluating the pros and cons. The really top priorities were the continuity of instruction. We have our students back in a routine, teachers focusing on learning targets, and we wanted to be able to, as seamlessly as possible, maintain that. How do we keep the learning going forward? We know our students lost a lot of instruction last spring and over the summer, and we don't want to lose any more. And then also the relationships that teachers and routines that teachers have built with their class, with their students, and the potential for disruption should we need to change those groupings or teachers. Those were the major considerations as we evaluated. And you can go ahead to the next slide, Dr. Fessler. And this really just represents, again, as we were evaluating, we kept going back to that ultimate goal of 5 days per week in-person instruction. However, our process, we knew, really needed to be gradual and a cautious transition. We felt like that would be the safest way to get there. So this was a key part of it. Our process will include asking parents to update their preference for remote or in-person instruction. So we know that parents in August made a selection. They may have changed their minds and they may have a different choice now. So we want to honor parents' choice at the current time for, do they want their child to remain in remote learning or be part of the transition to in-person instruction? So then that will lead to the gradual transition starting in a staggered manner, starting on November 5th. And as mentioned before, we are already bringing some students to school for in-person instruction where warranted. So between now and November 4th, we will continue to do that and potentially expand. for students who we are finding have obstacles to participation. Then as we begin bringing the grade levels back on a staggered basis, we will start with a hybrid model in which only half the students attend in person each day. Speaking to the classroom capacities and trying to maintain distancing, we can better do that when we don't have the full number of students in the classroom. So we'll start with that, and then we will also have the students who are remote joining in the class live sessions through live stream. Based on our considerations and evaluation, this model preserved the continuity of instruction and maintained the current routines and relationships the best. I'll add that, none of these models gave us every single thing we wanted. So that was a tough choice. We want to look a little bit further at, if you want to go to the next slide, I'll share, because I know it's been a question brought up. We've been hearing from some teachers. I know lots of questions about the live stream versus the remote academy.
Green, do you want this slide?
Yeah, that one, please. So I think I got everything on the process, but now let's look at why the live stream versus remote academy. So before we look at the schedule and the details, I want to just be upfront about this piece. There are pluses and deltas to this approach. There are other models that perhaps students go to school, some go in the morning and some go in the afternoon. And approaches like that may work for some districts, but with our students that are transported, that makes that type of model not possible or feasible. Other models where maybe today students are in person and tomorrow are asynchronous, our team really felt that that would reduce our instruction. It would take 2 days to get through one lesson. So that was why those models were not were kind of eliminated initially. But I want to point out a few pieces about the pluses and deltas. The live streaming model, obviously both of these you can see have pluses and deltas. There is no change in teacher needed. The teacher can remain with their current group, current schedule, does provide that continuity of instruction, allows us to be fluid and shift in and out of remote. Even if it's just a child who suddenly has to go remote, the child can be accommodated through the live stream option. And we do know that but there are some deltas to this. Divided attention of the teacher. Teachers may be trying to monitor the students and the students that are in person and those that are remote, which is challenging for sure. We also know that in any case, our remote instruction, our teachers are doing a fantastic job. And some of those pieces will look a little different if they are dividing their attention between two groups. There's also challenges of live streaming, even from a technology standpoint. And it could result in the need to hire more ESP staff to monitor students. So that's kind of our pluses and deltas of the live stream version. And then we did the same for the remote academy. So you'll remember the remote academy idea was to anybody who wants remote, those students are sectioned differently with a teacher that is full remote. All instruction would be full remote, and all students in the class would be fully remote. So there would not be that same divided attention of different groups. However, what we really, when we started looking at our staffing numbers, and also, again, something unique to our district, some of our schools, there may be only one first grade gen ed teacher. And so that teacher has all the first graders. So if that teacher goes remote, now we need a teacher for those students, or potentially dividing that if we went with the remote academy idea. Teachers may need to change grade levels or roles, or their class may go from a second grade to a 2-3 multi-age in our effort to regroup students. Those are some serious changes for both students and staff. It could result in us needing additional teachers, which will be very hard to find. In that example of a first grade teacher who is doing remote academy, we need someone else to pick up those first grade in-person students. So this leads to difficulty in sectioning. especially when you consider programming needs. It would not address the temporary quarantining or remote need for students who are quarantining. And then potentially, we felt more disruption to instruction. A new teacher, getting to know the kids again, figuring out where they're at again. So some disruption to their instruction. So these are just some of the pros and cons that we weighed in before recommending this option. And again, we want this transition to be as seamless as possible. We know that we have a transition process. So what it is right now, what it is when we go back, is not our ultimate goal. We are going to be working toward getting there. So there are some pieces that probably will be somewhat disruptive in the process, but we want to minimize that as much as possible.
Thank you, Maureen. Ross, you had mentioned earlier today that we have 71 sections that are kind of outlier or singleton sections. Can you explain, because as Maureen explained this and she talked about, if there's a first grade teacher who needs to be remote, what happens to her students that would be in person? And logically, you would think they could go to the other grade level teachers at that grade level. But in some cases, in some of our buildings, we may have a 3-section school, and they could have one section of gen ed and 2 sections of dual language. And instead of going to teachers within that school, they may be assigned to teachers from another school potentially. Can you talk a little bit about that? Or Maureen, can you build on that piece of the discussion from earlier today?
I absolutely can. I actually recounted it, and we have just over 85 singleton classes. And what that means is, like a Ridge Family Center, there are 2 teachers at the same grade within the same program, general education, ESL. So in that kind of an example, if there was something problematic with one of the classes, the other class could absorb. But we have a number of other district schools that have specialized programming in them, like Bird and John Jay, for instance. They have 3 singletons at, John Jay has 3 singletons at kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, because they have a gen ed ESL at kindergarten, they have a dual language 1-way at kindergarten, and they have a dual language 2-way at kindergarten. So those students are they're in those programs. Juliet Low is another school that has gen ed ESL. They have dual language 1-way, dual language 2-way, and they have special education programming. So they really have 4 different programs in their building. And some of the programs are more similar to others. And then there are some buildings, of course, that utilize multi-age. Sometimes that is a result of some of the singletons, but it is a very important detail that Dr. Fessler and Maureen bring up, because again, from a staffing and a programming capacity, it's not as simple as there are 2 or 3 teachers at every grade level. If we use that kind of a bubble approach, we have more options. There are just over 85 situations where that's quite difficult.
So,
and that's at the K5 level.
In those situations, Ross, those students would then be assigned to a teacher from another building teaching that program. Is that correct?
Well, so yes, some of the things that we're looking at are what are those, what are those next step measures? The first, of course, is could we combine? And then if we couldn't, could we find coverage within the building? And then if we couldn't do that, could we find coverage from another building? And if we couldn't do that, are we combining with another class in the district? Of course, at the same grade level. And then of course, there could be does that class have to switch to remote if the teacher's output can be remote? Because we know even 2 3rd grade classes, one at Devonshire and one at Frost, may be from a Monday to a Tuesday to a Wednesday in different places with their learning and their curriculum.
Thank you, Ross. So again, we really like the idea of a separate remote learning academy, but as we began to look at parent preferences earlier in the fall, and we began to look at staffing needs, it really became a pretty significant challenge that really caused us to look at other models as we've moved.
And I do want to add just very quickly, it's really a compliment and celebration of our rich programming. Right now, it's a staffing, it's a hurdle, but you know, in really remembering the diversity and the depth of our programming. That's a great thing.
I think it just reminds us too, each district is unique. As you can see in Tom's slides previously, districts have different plans based on their uniqueness and their needs. Again, Remote Academy was something we really were feeling like we could do. Had we started in the summer, we would have a little bit of time to do that resectioning of students. But now that we're ingrained in our current models and thinking about potentially changing, not just for the Remote Academy students, it could be a change for those in person as well. So that is the reason for our recommendation and the reason behind what you see on the screen now for our model for step 3. So as we begin the transition, we will divide the in-person students into 2 groups so that fewer students are in person on any given day. Again, this is in step 3. Another reason why, even if we had 2 teachers, similar teachers at a grade level, we may not want to have one go Remote Academy and one stay in person if we're talking about adding more students to the class, because we are really trying to maintain that distancing as much as possible. So in this example, half the students opting for in-person will be in group A and half will be in group B. The group assignments will be based on the first letter of the student last name. If siblings from the same family have different last names, they will stay together. We have that information in Skyward, so we can do that. They will be based on the first letter of the last name, something like A through L, M through Z, but we want to do the math on that. Once our remote students have registered that they want remote, we can take a look and see what would be the best way to most evenly divide the students. What letter would that be? And then group A would attend in person on Tuesday and Thursday. Group B would attend in person on Tuesday and Friday. And group C would be fully remote Monday through Friday. Those are the people that have chosen full remote. Wednesday, again, in step 3, all students would be remote. This will allow for additional cleaning, but also for teachers to meet with the entire class in one setting, and versus some in person and some remote like the other days. This plan features an extended AM session of 4 hours for in-person. We're working on those exact start and stop times based on transportation. And then students will be able to get a lunch and a breakfast for the next day, or even lunches for the subsequent days. Go home and join in asynchronous activities. I've added a couple notes there about Ridge and the ELC, but I want to point out, because we have been asked, why the alternating days or staggered days versus 2 days in a row? And there are advantages, again, like everything, advantages and disadvantages. There are advantages to 2 days in a row, like group A, Monday, Tuesday, group B, Thursday, Friday. However, in the end, a very important consideration for us was access to meals for our students. And we felt that if a student left on Tuesday, even with 3 or 4 lunches or breakfasts, they would not really, be able to eat those by Friday. There's only so many days that those breakfasts and lunches can last and really be something kids would want to eat. So again, given our district, we felt that the staggered approach would allow that regular opportunity for meals. So let's take a peek at kind of the visual of what this might look like for students. And this visual here is really just a general overview that applies to elementary and junior high. Obviously, will be much more detailed with communications as we go forward. And it shows how the various groups, what they're doing each day, and what that synchronous time is. So you can see in the morning, group A on Monday, group A might be attending in person while B and C are remote. And then Tuesday, that would reverse. All students would dismiss, have lunch, a break, and pick up with a block in the afternoon for some asynchronous activities, as well as staff office hours, might even be small group instructional times in the afternoon, and planning. So this just represents what that would look like. So again, just kind of a little bit about the process, and I hope really the why behind our choice of live stream versus remote academy. And hopefully you got a little bit of a picture of what that would look like.
And just a reminder, this is stage 3. In a few minutes, we'll talk about timeline, revisit that piece. But this would be the stage 3 transition, moving us at some point, we would go to stage 4, then 5. So next steps, we will be sending out a parent communication with instruction on September 30th, which is Wednesday. We'll describe the model as well as we can, but we will be clear that our goal is 5 days per week instruction, full day schedule, when as safely as possible. And then we'll talk through the different stages to detail what that will look like. Excuse me. Planning and preparation have been underway for quite some time. Ross is working again on the HR staffing survey, the family option selection. We're encouraging parents to complete their selection as soon as possible. That will significantly help us as we roll out our staffing plan, and then also what the daily schedules will look like with our students and staff. There are some trainings with staff that we'll absolutely work on. One of which will be with the live stream, what best practice instructional could look like in terms of trying to teach to both remote and in person. As Ron indicated, he's finalizing the transportation arrangements, and then collectively across the district, our custodial staff, our leadership teams, and have done an amazing job in the building spaces and in our district office spaces to get those prepared, to get our safety protocols and signage in place, both in throughout our schools, classrooms, and the district office. As you know, we've been set up here, since July. And then the next piece is to now have a board discussion and direction. So as I indicated, we would revisit the timeline and blown up here. So as the board approved our plan in August, at that point in time, we said November 5th would be the point in time when we would bring kids back for in-person instruction if safe. So, looking at the indicators, we're in a position where we can do that. Again, this was just an attempt to try to outline a timeline that brings everyone back. We can absolutely make adjustments to this, but you can see from this larger illustration, November 5th, 16th, and 23rd are the 3 checkpoints for stage 3 return. And at this point, I would like to open it up for questions from the board.
I'll start if that's all right. This is Robert Mancia. I have a lot of, as a parent that does remote learning, I want my son's education, I want to transfer that back to the educators. I want my son back in school, learning. And I'm looking at this plan, and the concern I have is, like, who benefits really, because I'm having a hard time seeing how the kids will benefit in the class if they're watching the live stream. I don't know what it looks like. Is it just, I'm picturing like a surveillance footage of the class, and I don't know how effective that's going to be. And I'm worried that it's not going to be fair for the kids that are home. I don't know how it benefits the parents, because looking at it, it's a lot more work for the parents. And a lot of the comments that we're getting are that the parents can't balance working from home and doing remote learning. And now we're doing, parents are going to possibly have to drop off their child. We don't know how long that process is going to take or what it's going to look like at the schools. Pick up the child. We don't know how long that process will take or look like. Now we have to feed the child at home, taking time away from the workday, and then going back into remote learning for the second half of the day. That's going to be a lot for our parents. And then on the third piece, looking at it from the teachers, it's double work. It's a lot of work. I don't know how teachers are going to be able to teach live with the kids in their classroom and pay equal amount of attention to the kids that are home watching at the same time, and planning for the kids that are in the classroom and planning for the kids that are at home. These are just the questions that are coming up, in my mind as I'm reading, as I'm watching this.
So is there a specific question you want us to address? Or, I mean, I heard all of these statements, but I don't know what the question is.
I guess it's what is this? What is the live feed instruction going to look like? Because that's where I have the hang up, where I just think that's going to be problematic.
Right. So, Maureen, do you want to respond?
Sure, I'll best I can without the technical details of, computers and things like that. But I mean, that is one of the reasons why we are trying out our sound field pieces, so that a teacher could be teaching a lesson in the classroom, modeling something, demonstrating. Our teachers won't be walking around the room like they used to all the time. And they hopefully won't be stationary or only in one spot, but they're not going to be able to have the student proximity, even when we're in person. So they would be teaching that lesson directly. Students would be in front of them. Students would be remotely. Oftentimes, even now, teachers put those student faces on the screen, so the whole class can see. So the students might be on the teacher's screen who are participating by Zoom. The students would be in front of them that are in their classroom. We absolutely recognize that, especially for our youngest grades, K1, probably 2, are we going to have another person in there to really help with that monitoring? We will. I mean, we're going to have to do the best we can with that. And why one of the deltas of that I mentioned was we may need to hire more ESP or supervised staff or supervisors, so that they can support in class to help that teacher with the monitoring. The teacher might then say, okay, now after the lesson is complete, here's your purposeful practice. At that point, the teacher might go to the students that are on remote and check in with them, while the supervisor is checking in with students that are in person, or vice versa. So we don't see that live session being like I know often it is now, where it's the whole time. We might really need to have some breaks in that, so that especially when our in-person students are, it's time to take a hand washing break, or we're going outside for a mask break. So that's why I also wanted to mention, and it's a delta as well, that remote instruction that we're doing now will look a little different. It won't be exactly the same as it is now, because we are going to have things like mask breaks, time when the teacher really needs to focus on the in-person, or time when the teacher needs to check in with those that are remote.
Robert, we have sections now where we could have a split classroom, or we could have a multi-grade level where our teachers are teaching to one group of kids while the others are doing independent practice, and vice versa. So although we don't think any of the models are ideal, we think that the relationships that our staff have developed with their students, their understanding and knowing of what they're capable, that's a pretty powerful plus that we have. Also keep in mind, like Maureen indicated, the live in person is not going to be like the live in person that we had before break, before the pandemic. I mean, we will have all our kids wearing masks. We will have our teachers wearing masks. The proximity of our teachers, I don't believe they will be walking around and getting in close proximity like they once were. I anticipate that many will be probably standing in front of their class for most of their instruction, working with students social distancing. So there are challenges with whatever model that we choose, but I think as the team talked through it, this outweighed others. And I know there are many other school districts, Schaumburg 54, 62, 214 are all employing similar models.
Can we see who else has comments from the board?
I want to add on to ask a little bit more about the question. I think a lot of parents think that when the kids go back into the classroom, that the computers will not be used as much. Is that something that they should be looking at? I mean, when they're making their decision? And also, what will happen? Should we actually have to shut down again? And then come back and then try and come back again as far as like the teacher that they have?
Yeah, those are great questions. And I want to just touch first on another question from Robert I just thought of too when he said, who benefits? What does this get us? I do want to just reiterate, this gets us the first step toward 5 days, full day back to in-person instruction. And it is not a full day, those 2 days. We are working with our park districts to resurrect the kids club programs and even extend to the earlier time. So hopefully we'll have some more information about that soon. But it gets us that step toward that. But yes, Patty, a couple things about the technology. So might students still be working on their device at school? Yes, but a much more limited amount of time. And also it gives that opportunity. Right now, our schools have done a great job of supply pickups and kits. But the reality is if a teacher saw a student 2 times a week, they could be giving them things much more regularly that they could be doing at home during asynchronous time that are not digital. So that would be a benefit. If we did have to shut down, the entire class would just go remote like on Wednesdays. So we do want our parents to know that just like a snow day, they'd have to be prepared for, even though tomorrow's Tuesday and my son is in group B, there may be a last minute change due to a quarantine situation or a staffing situation where the entire class goes remote.
And would they use paper at school, or are you going to be able to distribute paper documents and things to the kids at school?
Yeah, we haven't been doing paper. I think what we just want to still be cautious of are books and other, we won't have any other shared supplies. Students will have their own supplied kits or materials in their backpack. So we won't be sharing pencils and markers and things like that.
Okay, thank you.
This is Courtney. I was wondering if I could pick up kind of where Robert was going with. I think where I'm struggling most with the model is with the early elementary grade teachers and trying to just imagine the challenges that, for example, a kindergarten teacher has in commanding the attention and organization of that teacher's in-person class, and then layering onto that the challenges with this remote group. And I think personally, if I was going to get on board with supporting those two simultaneously in those earlier grades, I would want to know that we had like a guaranteed ESP in the room to assist those teachers. Because I'm just imagining too, like, we've done a great job, as Ross was pointing out earlier, of building relationships as best we can online. And I would hate to see like these young learners who have just established a relationship and are now remote feeling like they're second-class citizens because they're not in the room.
Right.
So I would like to see, and I'm not sure, I'm not an early childhood expert. I don't know if that's K-1-2 or what grade that goes up to, that I would want to see a second person in the room. And I would also want to know that there's some logical allocation between the teacher and the ESP so that both groups of students are getting real face time with the teacher, and with the ESP.
No, I agree with what you said, Courtney. I think that's what we've been looking at too. And I will say that since the presentation to staff on Thursday, I have had several teachers, including a kindergarten and a first grade teacher, say they are willing to do some trials. Somebody even today, here's a possible option I think that could work. So we definitely want to start, once we are ready to move forward, doing some of those things. Trying it out like a dress rehearsal, even if it's not with real students coming in. Let's try it. Let's get in a classroom. Here's the teacher teaching. Here are the kids let's kind of see, because I agree that extra adult, especially, and when K and 1 return in this model, they're the only ones. We can focus completely on that as a school, the K and the 1. But what would that role be? What is the most logical role for the ESP or the volunteer, whoever it is during this time? And what should the teacher be doing? And when should they reverse roles?
So
I think that we do need that. We need to give that a try.
We also, as you see in the timeline, in December, we will actually, dipstick and take a take a temperature of what's working, what's not working. And we have the ability to be creative within this. So once we get started, there may be possibility that maybe an ESP, or if we do have some schools that have multiple sections that are the same. Those teachers could utilize their resources, and one may take the remote section for a breakout of some type of instruction. So we do have some ability to be creative, but again, we've not done this before. It's as someone mentioned, it's probably much easier for college, high school, and junior high kids. We absolutely acknowledge that there will be challenges in our primary, but we believe that we can use our resources to make the best of that. And again, phase 3, we're hoping is very temporary. I mean, we're hoping that as we come back and revisit this in December, that we're already starting to talk about phase 4 planning and beyond. So we'll have a lot of feedback. Keep in mind that the break does give us a natural separation, so that if this does not go well, that we do have an opportunity to reschedule and start looking at a different plan for the start of the second semester, which actually makes more logical sense if we're going to do something drastically different, to look at that starting point versus trying to switch at the beginning of the second quarter. So that was part of the conversation that SLT had, and even within our oversight team, as we were looking again at really a challenging decision between two models.
This is Janice Krinsky. I know that Randy and I had talked, and he had actually suggested the idea of starting some in-person trials to you, and that's now represented by perhaps an October 26th date. I would really like to see two things happen. I would like to see if some of those early kids, teachers for primary grade students are willing, can we actually bring in real students and try this model starting in October 26th? I have a lot of reservations about how well it's going to work as well. I understand the trade-offs, but it worries me. So the sooner we can actually get data, the better. And I know lots and lots of teachers are worried too. And I think we could survey teachers, and we might want to, as to whether or not they're okay with trying the hybrid versus having live stream and remote academy separate. But I think without actually having some experience about it, they might change their minds if they see how it plays out. So I guess I would urge you to try to come up with a strategy where we can actually try this with some classrooms starting in October.
Yeah, and I think we could, Janice, I think even if it was a voluntary, obviously if the teacher was willing and there were parents that were willing to bring their kids for a couple of hours, I think there would be parents and teachers that would be willing to do that, because the other piece is, that will help us know, like, what way does this work best?
Correct.
How should the camera be used? Which microphone is better? And, what glitches to anticipate? And we don't want either the in-person or the remote students to feel like they are not the important ones in there. I mean, that is the challenge right now. In our current model, we have that. It's that classroom climate is established. We don't want to hinder that. That's why we are steering toward this not ideal model, among many not ideal models, but to get us to our goal of back to full in-person instruction.
I just imagine all these sad children at home feeling left out because they're not there in person. And I think that you recognize the social emotional risks, and that you're building in some opportunities to try to ameliorate that problem. And I think that's really laudable. And I think we really need to pursue that as well as we can, to get that second person in there so that the children really feel included and supported. I'm sure Katie agrees.
And that's also why we really feel like the Wednesdays will keep that class kind of glued. Like Wednesdays, everyone's together. They're all remote, at least again in step 3. And so that will help. And then also that small group instruction, everyone is remote in the afternoon. So they're going to have small group instruction with kids that are in the in-person group or in the remote group, to keep that class kind of cohesive as a classroom.
I'd like to ask another question, and then I'm going to make sure other people have plenty of time to talk. What about the idea of having them in school longer for a longer day? I realize there are logistic problems around lunch. What are they, and do you see them as insurmountable at this point?
Janice, this is Katie. I want to start again by going back to kind of that same message from tonight, that our goal is to look at lots of mitigating strategies and have them work in concert with each other. And one of the big mitigating strategies is having face coverings. And so lunch is a time when face coverings have to be off. And so it is certainly not impossible, but that is one of the things that presents challenges just by the nature of having masks off for an extended period of time in order to eat.
The CDC guidelines allow for that for lunch, and they say even 3 to 6 feet is acceptable for lunch. I do think it increases the transmission risk, and I guess I just don't know how to think about that. I guess I would prefer them being 6 feet apart, and that would be difficult if you were going to bring back all kids that wanted in person. Right now, with them coming in an AB schedule, you probably have small enough classes that you could feed them lunch, but then down the road, what are you going to do? You might have to.
This is Mardell. Can I have a comment here?
Sure, of course.
I don't think ever in all the years that I've been on the board, we have ever had such a groundswell of questions from our parents and from our community. So I know that this is a huge issue. It's one of the biggest issues that we've ever had to deal with. I congratulate the committees and the district on the way you have approached this, because nobody has worked as hard as all of our committees and all of our teachers and the union, the SLT, the custodians, everybody in getting this plan worked out. There is no perfect plan. Right. Absolutely not. There's no perfect plan. Parents, think very carefully before you decide to send your children to school, because it will not be what they're used to. It will be entirely different. And the one thing that you can do to help your children and the teachers in the school is to start training your children right now to wear the masks, and to impress upon them how important it is that they have their mask on at all times in school. Without the mask, we are going to end up with more cases of COVID than we anticipate. So you really have to get your children ready to come to school, if that's your choice, by making sure that they understand how to wear the mask and that it must be on at all times. Good luck to all of you in making your decisions. I know it's not going to be easy, and good luck to the teachers and all the administrators who are working on this. It won't be easy for you, but I'm sure that with everybody's cooperation, we'll come up with some plan that will at least partway satisfy everybody. So good luck.
Thank you, Mardell. Let me bring a little organization to this part of the presentation and discussion. What we'd like to do is reinforce our timeline, revisit our metrics one more time, just to make sure that we're agreeing on our metrics, and then again, kind of lock into that model. So that really is the goal of this part of the presentation. But I do want to finish answering and responding to any questions. But I just want the board to know ultimately that's where we want to end this conversation, is with those 3 things and some direction. So again, continuing with any questions from the presentation.
I'm interested in hearing from people who want to respond to the proposed model. And Chris, you have something to say there?
Yes, thank you, Janice. Chris Godlevich here. Dr. Fessler, 2 questions along the same theme. So we're clearly in step 3 according to the model, and we're knocking on the door of graduating to step 4. Is it possible to move up the step 3 timeline to, say, the Monday of October 12th, or to actually shoot for step 4 as your proposed October 26th and accelerate getting started.
Can you remind me of what step 4 entails?
So step 3 is the 2 days in person,
Yes.
non-consecutive days, which we're at now, according to the model.
Yes.
And then step 4 is the 4 days in person per week with the remote option. So remote option exists under both. That choice stays for those who choose, but bringing up the 2 days in person with a couple hours that exist on the calendar. So slide, bear with me one second. So slide 27 with this proposed group AB Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday, to move that up to, let's say, October 12th, do our learning there since we're already there, and then give ourselves another milestone saying by November 5th or whatever it is to move to step 4, since we're already on the border today.
I don't understand why we're on the border.
So the case count is 74.
75.3.
Okay, and step 4 is 51 to 70 per 100,000.
I want to have a different conversation about the metrics because I have a concern and a reservation about it. Can we hold that off? Although Chris, I agree with you. I'd rather see kids in 4 days a week. I really am not comfortable with just 2 days a week. I think that's hard for families and it's hard for kids. But I'm not sure what the numbers then are going to look like, because then you couldn't do an A-B schedule.
Just a reminder that we need 3 to 4 weeks. So if this is something the board would want us to consider from, tonight, we would need 3 to 4 weeks before we could get all of our transportation and food service finalized. So
Correct.
that would be the very earliest. So it wouldn't quite align with the date that Chris had suggested, but it might get us a week earlier than the 26th. That would mean, again, we would have to start putting plans in place tomorrow if that was the direction of the board.
I wouldn't want to accelerate it. I think we had an expectation for teachers and parents that we were going to start closer to November 5th. So I don't mind moving it up a week, but I really don't want to upset the apple cart.
We've already upset the apple cart by pulling the option for having in person from the get-go. So the apple cart's upset, but with the respective progress in getting started over, and with all the respect, all of the hours and all the work that's gone into this has been, I couldn't comprehend everybody's hours and effort to put in this. We will not achieve a perfect plan before we begin. Right. So I would ask, my only input is if we're in step 3, let's move and get step 3. And as soon as we step to step 4, if it's an every other week or every 4 week, whatever the cycle is, but clearly the option that the families who want in person, they don't have it right now. And we're just so far away, but according to the data, we're well within a range to allow for kids to be in school for those who choose to.
Can we talk? All right, Randy, and then I want to talk about data before we say we're in range.
Well, I completely have complete sentiments and understanding what Robert and Courtney were saying, and the understanding of the struggles in the asynchronous and then remote. I think more to address your question, Chris, and where I'm at right now is I see that we are right on the cusp. We start looking at it, we're right on the cusp of, step 4. Mm-hmm. And I would like us to get to step 4 as quickly as possible. I'm also under the understanding, this is what we agreed upon, is when we first sent out this thing in July to the parents about remote or, in person, that was effective for the beginning of the school year. And then in early August, we decided we're going to hold off on that because we determined it was safer to go fully remote until October or the end of October, early November. So I think that kind of took away that remote thing. But what I'm really looking at is, and one thing I proposed, one thing when Janice and I talked to Dr. Fessler about it was the, kind of get some kids in there, just test what we've got.
Right.
Just to see what happens, so we can identify, hey, a couple classes, hey, this is working, this isn't working, just so we can kind of give a heads up. I really think that if we start with the proposed timeline in phase 3, but if we see a dramatic decrease in numbers, I have no problem going to phase 4 when we start rolling in the next age groups. And then we can just, kind of say, here's our timeline of when we're going to bring kids back to school. So we have the, K1 and 6th grades on November 5th. 2 weeks later, we have, what was it, 2nd and 3rd, and 7th, I believe. So if somehow in like middle of November, we say, hey, our numbers are consistently in step 4, the data, why don't we bring back that whole group then at a 4-day at that point? Then we don't have to, say, hey, we did phase 3, but we're really in phase 4, and we've done a lot of testing. If we see we're doing well at phase 3, the numbers are continually decreasing as we go into as this time goes on, as the kids are, wearing their mask and the public is doing their diligence, wearing their mask and everything like that. We could go to phase 4 in middle February, in middle of November, when the students are supposed to coming back based on the timeline. So that's where my thinking is at.
The one issue I have with that, Randy, is I feel like it may feel very chaotic to families that we're doing a certain thing, they're coming in every other day, and then suddenly, we're going to make a change. And so I guess I want to be sensitive to that. And that sort of leads me to thinking that I'd rather start with 4 days and just be done with it, because the metrics look pretty good with the exception of one. But let other people respond to what Randy said, or Chris, or whatever. Right? Courtney, you look like you might want to say something.
I'd like to weigh in, because I agree with Chris on the level of, I think the metrics are there that indicate to us that it is safe to send some students back. And I think my opinion would be, I would like that to be the most beneficial for students and parents who make that choice possible. Mm-hmm. And so for me, what I'd actually like to see primarily, and I'm not sure we got a full answer to this question because I know we hopped around a little, but I am still interested in a full day when the kids go back. And I'm wondering, to Janice's question earlier, what are the major barriers to the lunch hour, and how have we thought about potentially overcoming those, or are some just non-starters?
So the idea was to have a soft rollout and try to build confidence, to check our mitigation strategies, make sure everything was working well and safely, and again, rolling into adding more days and more time to the day. Thinking of social distancing, and think of our middle schools. If 70% of our families want to send their kids back, at Grove Junior High, that's 700 to 800 kids to try to put through a lunch service. And even at our elementaries, that could be 250 to 300 kids at our schools trying to provide space for lunch. And, if we have lunch, that's an area where we really want to try to stick to at least 6 feet of social distancing and use all of our spaces. So, that's the concern about trying to do too much too fast. On the other hand, Katie can add to this, but again, we also need to build confidence of our families, of our students, and our staff to make sure that we can do all these things safely and not feel overly rushed. Katie, did you want to add anything?
Yes, thank you. Originally, we did do a study of lunch periods. We had several of our principals help us out with mapping out how this could happen, using every space in your building, the timing, and the disinfecting protocols that have to happen in between groups of students. And we ended up at our larger schools with kids eating lunch at 9 a.m. and at 2 p.m. because we really had to spread out those lunch periods over the entire day, even utilizing 2 and 3 spaces at some of our buildings to get everybody through a lunch period period and a rushed lunch period to make sure that those disinfecting protocols could happen in between. Now, that wouldn't be everywhere, but that is one of the obstacles that we saw originally as we were planning for lunch periods. And as Dr. Fessler mentioned, we're asking staff to do entirely new procedures, practices. We're asking families to do entirely new things. So I do think that there is strength in gradually increasing all of those new routines and those new habits. So we're truly getting the health procedures down and doing them very well, because what we don't want to do is completely rush that. And then we have people, large amounts of people missing self-certification or not understanding the health protocol, not understanding when to send their child and when not to. We want to communicate all of those things very well. And we also want to make sure that our staff have the adequate training to be able to do all of that, to look for symptoms, to know how to notify their nurses or their administrators if somebody in their classroom is symptomatic. So there's lots of little health pieces here. Another example is our N95s right now for nurses and custodians. We've been able to get our hands on some, and some are not passing that fit testing and they need different kinds. So we're still ordering and trying to locate them so we can get that fit testing to occur. So those are some of the pieces that are really pros when we think of a gradual increase in time or a number of days. I definitely agree that we want to try and help our families as much as possible and get them in that routine and that consistency as quickly as possible. But I also want to consider that we're asking people to do completely new routines and protocols that they're not yet familiar with and need training and materials for.
Okay, Patty has her hand up, has been waiting patiently.
Thank you. I just have this fear that we're going to jump on the plane before it's completely built. I really want you guys to have the time you need to be able to get all the safety protocols in place, the distancing, the lunch, the buses, all that kind of stuff that what the teachers need to do in place before we just throw it all in there. I think if we give it the time that we've originally plotted out, that we wait to send the kids back till November 5th, that gives us the time to get everything in place. I know it's not ideal, but I think that's what we're going to need to make sure that you guys have the time to not rush to get everything done, but to make sure it's the safest we can possibly make everyone.
That's a good point. I have 2 points as well. One, when the kids are in just part of the time, they're going to have the same mitigation protocols anyway. So you're already going to have to train the teachers. So I'm not thinking it's necessarily as big a bump to just go to a fuller day. The second point I'd like to make is that the CDC guidelines stated that there is a preference for feeding kids in their classrooms so that you're keeping cohorts together to lower the risk of an outbreak if you have a positive case outside of that smaller group. They also say that it's okay to eat without a mask if you are 3 or 6 feet social distance. Yes, 6 feet is definitely better, but I think feeding kids in classrooms is preferable to trying to find larger spaces to social distance and all the cleaning that's involved. However, I recognize that logistically, there are also issues, aren't there, about who is going to supervise kids in classrooms when teachers are, have to have breaks too, and they don't typically supervise kids at lunch unless that's an extra stipend or something, right? Maureen?
They do, Janice. I was going to mention that earlier. So that is something that I think coming in with that slow and gradual transition and staff seeing that, okay, I can see that these efforts are working, this is going smoothly, I might be willing to then be a lunch supervisor. We're going to need more supervisors than less, and it's not always easy to get lunch supervisors, even with extra pay. So, and especially students eating in the classrooms, that is a lot of supervision. So I know initially, even in the summer, that the staffing of it was also something we just really wanted to take a look at. Do we have enough supervisors to supervise lunch?
Right. I know that one school district is using a lot of parents to come in, and there are other vectors for illness that way, but that may be one way to cover it.
Janice, can I
Other-
ask another question?
Yeah, Chris.
So Dr. Fessler and Courtney and Janice bring up great points about the challenges, and I highlight the challenges and concerns around the 2 days or the break and every other day to start. But it sounds like we're all on board for the 4-day as a step in. Can we go to a 4-day model, but control our logistical and operational challenges by controlling the day? So say, again, going back to slide 27, that first block across the top row, that might be the 4-day model. And then 2 weeks later, it goes from whatever that block represents. Let's just say it's 2 hours, go to 3 hours, go to 4 hours, and gradually get to 4 full days. And we can start that timeline that you folks suggested on the 5th of November. Is that a possibility?
Chris, are you suggesting that we run so 4 days a week of in-person instruction, and then run the 4-hour day, go asynchronous in the afternoon with a grab and go lunch? Is that what you're describing?
Yes.
For the first part? That is absolutely possible. Again, part of the rationale for doing the AB was to have smaller groups of kids to transition more slowly into this, to build confidence, to feel safe about what we're doing. But based on the other indicators, if that's the direction of the board, it is something that we would be able to do. And that is, basically we're moving from phase or from 2 to 4 and skipping 3.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Mardell has a comment, and then I want to talk about the metrics. Mardell, go ahead.
Yes, this is so uncertain and imperfect and unknown. To me, we should follow the plan. And then if our positivity levels don't go up and we know that we're successful and things are working, we can always increase the amount of time to bring it up a week earlier or whatever it is along the way. Also, I agree with Patty Petrelli. Both she and I were teachers. The teachers need time to get organized and work with this project because it's entirely different. And I do agree, however, with what Courtney said before about just having a couple classes if teachers want to go in ahead of time and try a couple of these things out. That's not a bad idea if you want to do that, because at least you'd have some idea of whether it's going to work or not. But I don't think you want to jump into all of the things at the same time, because if all of a sudden you start losing teachers because they get sick and you have a problem even manning your classes, you've got another problem to think about.
Yeah, this is just difficult.
Janice, before we start talking about metrics, can I go back to, I got a question on page 27 as well, screen 27. One thing we're talking about is like the extended morning session. One thing that kind of worries me about this is when we get to the lunch break session of it, we have kids that are taking half an hour, 35-minute bus rides home from the schools to their place of residence. Have we really kind of looked at that and when the asynchronous learning activities are going to start and stuff like that? Because that kind of really, I could see that being difficult for those kids to adapt to. Hey, I'm leaving school, I'm on a bus, I get home, I don't have time to eat, and I got to jump into asynchronous learning. And that's one of the concerns. I have kind of a concern about that. And also, like, where will the specials fit in here? Like, like gym classes, the time for the teachers to get those little things where, where gym teachers, getting these kids little activities, or they're doing a little art project or something like that. I just don't. I don't see that in there. I know it's probably built in there, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, I didn't break it down in here, like which ones are, what's literacy, what's math, what specials, just yet, until we have some ideas. So we would, so the specials can either be, if we go with the 4-hour model, could either be, I would anticipate just even some amount of specials within that morning, and then some could be also asynchronous. So it may be during step 3, though there's a little bit of both. And we did have that comment come up the other day. In some of the time frames that we're playing around with, it's an hour and a half, Randy, from the dismissal to when the asynchronous starts. So a comment from a parent was, well, the kids that are remote, might be ready to start sooner. So maybe we do something where kids that are remote that day, have something sooner than and giving those kids that are in person a little more time to get home, chill for a little bit, have their lunch before they're jumping right back into work.
Mm-hmm.
And then Randy, I just wanted to jump in really quickly about the bus routes. We do have our routes that we've done over time, but we don't know how much they may fluctuate depending on how many kids are actually going to opt into riding the bus. And that's the big thing we're waiting to see. So it was a good question.
And that also impacts to the 2 days and 4 days. When we know how many students are choosing in person, then we will know where we're at with those classroom capacities. Is that something that's just, wow, once we remove the remote, we're really there, even with the A and the B. We won't know that until we know what parents' preferences are.
Well, but I think that changes depend upon, what you're going to offer the kids, how many are going to be comfortable with this versus thinking that they can go to 4 days, or how soon they might go to 4 days and under what conditions we might get there. So I think whatever model we're selling is going to influence the choices that parents make. So, we have to be really aware of that.
So are we in a position to, Dr. Fessler, you're looking for directions from us for what model to proceed with. Are we in a position to do that?
So just backtracking briefly, we wanted to lock into the metrics to make sure that, we have a determination or some guidance in terms of when we can be in school, when we should not be in school. The governor has been very clear by making, those areas that are red. That's where he will intervene. He's provide local discretion to all school districts in Illinois outside of that. So we need direction on, okay, these are the metrics, internal and external. I think what we've shared is the green and the yellow are the areas that we would ask the board to consider. We've shared the model. I do appreciate the suggestions for some trials or some practice or rehearsal of those prior to bringing back in the full implementation. And then, yes, we would like direction on, we're in step 2. I've heard discussion about moving to step 3. I've also heard discussion about step 4. I've heard the board talk about having lunch, not having lunch. Again, I think that's an area that we're not feeling as comfortable with as a plan team in terms of that whatever that initial step in phase is of having lunch. So,
okay. Well, I defer partly to what you obviously have done so much work in this area. So I understand that. I would like to talk about the metrics though, because I have a concern about one of them that is really way out of whack depending upon what zip code you look at. And that really concerns me because I'm not sure how to think about that. Right now, the numbers for positivity rate range from 3.03 in one zip code and up to 4.07 in another. Those are all really low. They're really fine. They say go ahead. But then what's the relationship between the case counts, the new cases per 100,000? Those in some cases in one zip code, they're up to 101.8 as of today. Okay, in one of our zip codes, that's way out of line. That is definitely a substantial risk of transmission, and those kids are all going to go to the same schools. So we can't just look at this as an overall number, I don't think, because it really ranges from 67.2 up to 101.8. Another zip code has 81.2 cases per 100,000. So how do we weight that? And how do we look at that in terms of our metrics and what we're dealing with? Okay, so that's where I'm really concerned. And it's zip code 60018 is 101.8. Zip code 60007 is at 81.2. And these numbers have gone up substantially over the last week, and they continue to rise. So what does that mean? I don't know, but it worries me. because I think it's an indicator that we're going to see raising positivity rates.
Yeah, and I think our advisory focus group was expressing some of those same concerns. Tom, do you want to speak to that? And
Yeah, I think the reality of, so when you talk positivity rates, it's very specific. Who was tested? How many people were positive from that testing group? There are a lot of people being tested in the northwest suburbs. The opportunity is there, but that's clearly only people who went to get the test. The flip side of that are those new cases. Janice, that's what you're speaking to on the incident rate side. Our discussion was we would combine our communities, but when you look at individual communities, there is a variance. I will say, and however you look at this, zip code is great because we really do get condensed, but everyone who lives in that zip code doesn't necessarily go to our school or even part of our school community. When you look at really any of ours, from Arlington Heights to Splains, there are multiple districts across every one of our pieces. But when you start to look at some of those individual pieces, you see a range, and maybe that is another way to look at it, that you want each community within a range, and not the combined, but each individual one.
Well, the question I have is, I know the numbers for 60005 and 6007 are pretty inclusive of the area where our students live, but I know that the Des Plaines zip codes of 60016 and 60018 are served by at least 2 districts. And I wish we had a way, and maybe there is one, to try to find out if that number is elevated because, for example, there's an outbreak in a nursing home or an outbreak someplace else. I mean, it's unfortunate right now that we can't find out what that number represents as far as our families and our students.
I totally understand that piece. Another piece that could be reviewed on that same site, they do show the last 7 days and what those rates look like.
Right.
Part of that state component was that increase in cases. What does that look like over time? Is it going up or is it going down? So you could create a range within each community and then say, how is it tracking? As you're pointing out, Janice, it is tracking up in a number of our communities. I think there was an assumption or a guess out there that with the Labor Day weekend holiday and get-togethers, that there was an expectation that these rates would go up, and they seem to be playing out over that period of time. So and some districts are looking at those pieces. Some districts aren't looking. I think District 63, as an example, is only focused on positivity rates, but they have pretty low rates. Some districts are focused on that. If we're under 70, we're good to go. I appreciate that we're able to focus in on our communities, but it is important to recognize, at least that I'm aware of, we can't get data just for District 59 families and our attendance areas.
No, but Tom, if we're using like Labor Day, these next several months, we have some like big events that people will be getting together for. So it's going to fit into the statistics. They're going to rise because people are going to, especially Thanksgiving, Christmas, Halloween. Are you kidding? People are going to get together for those things. And I think they're going to have that mentality that, it's been okay up to this point. We don't have to worry a lot, and we're doing what we're supposed to. But I think that the statistics are still going to go up.
Yeah, I think you made a good point, but also I'll kind of, not to disagree with you, but I'll counteract this one. Winter's coming on and the cold season's coming. The colder season's coming on. So the outdoor sports that kids are doing right now and the gatherings of those things are also going to be minimized as well. So there won't be as many gatherings of, I'll use the example of my daughter's girls softball team.
Even that one, Randy, that's an outdoor.
Yeah, but there's still
what's going to happen indoors more.
But I mean, my daughter, an example, my daughter's softball team has 6 or 7 high schools represented on her softball high school team. Mm-hmm. And they're sitting on a bench together for an hour and a half.
Randy, I'm just curious. Do they wear masks?
Yeah, It's,
Do they wear
it's-
masks? I'm just curious.
yeah, and we don't know what's gonna happen because, flu season's also coming up as well too.
Yeah,
So, how's that gonna, a lot of the symptoms are the same.
yeah.
So how's that gonna?
A lot of parents and families are not taking precautions anymore. My neighbors on all four sides of me get together with family members, multi-generational. They don't wear masks. They don't social distance. They are, it's a time bomb, and people are getting less, committed. My own children are not being as careful as they were before. So,
speaking of the colder months, maybe this is a question for Dr. Ossel, but what is the instruction to the staff regarding the kids that do arrive with the seasonal runny nose and the sore throat and cough that just comes from colder temperature?
A good question. First of all, our staff will need to be familiar with student health plans. So we do have students that have seasonal allergies that have reported illnesses that are regular for them, that are typical. And so our nurses work with our families to create health plans and make sure teachers are aware of those plans. So if a child does have seasonal allergies, the teacher's aware of that. If they have symptoms that are not related to something that is typical for them, they will need to contact their administration and the nurse will actually come down to the room to do an assessment of that child. That of course is when we have our fitted N95s, but they will come to the room to do the assessment. So there's less movement of the child. And then if they need to, they would move that child into a satellite nurse station, isolated for people who are potentially symptomatic. And then we would go through that response protocol that we talked through earlier this evening. Now, there are a lot of cold and flu symptoms that are the same symptoms listed for COVID-19. And so that is going to be a challenge. We do have really clear decision-making criteria from IDPH. And sometimes those symptoms could result in that child being out of school for 10 days. And it may be the result of the flu. So we're of course going to encourage parents to see their primary care physicians. And if it becomes an alternative diagnosis, they would come back to school. If it's not an alternative diagnosis, then we're following that 10-day protocol.
I'm even worried about this idea that if a child normally has the allergy symptoms, that we should just discount the chance that that child actually has contracted COVID-19. And one of our own staff members over the summer had a child who went in for a sports physical and had, symptoms that were allergies. And so they were like, well, our child, he always has these symptoms. Well, the doctor's office happened to be very conservative and tested him, and he was positive for COVID-19. So, that concerns me. I'm not so sure I'm so comfortable with that.
I'd like to piggyback on that, Dr. Oswald, with just the close context. Let's just say positive case happens in the school and we're tracing the close context. Because even today, with all the schools reopening, there's an article in the Daily Herald today, District 15, five students at Winston Junior High had a quarantine, and that was posted an hour ago. And they just reopened up. But when we're trying to identify close context, I'm using an example, let's say a third grader. Are we asking that third grader, who were you with? Like I'm thinking of a situation of calling a parent saying, little Timmy said that he was with your child for more than 15 minutes and now your child must stay home for 10 days. How are we tracing backwards from the positive case?
I think more realistically, we would start with seating charts. So again, one of the things that is so minor, but is so very important is that our staff will have to have assigned seats in all classes. We'll have to really stick to that because when it comes to contact tracing, we want to be able to automatically identify before even asking questions, who should we be looking at just in terms of proximity. The same goes for the bus. So we will have to have really clear seating assignments on buses as well to know who was within that 6 feet. And then our nurses who are all trained in this will then on top of that start asking questions of specifics and who they interacted with, who they came in the building with that day, who they may have eaten lunch with if that's the case, and looking through the other pieces of the day and where they may have interacted with others.
I think our mitigation strategies are quite robust. I'm pretty pleased with all the work that's been done, and I'm really not concerned with our response as long as the teachers have been trained well enough and they're comfortable with it. So that to me isn't really a concern, and I think you guys have all done a great job. So
Janice, can I say one thing? I have one more concern.
sure.
And this probably goes to Ross more so than anything. So our sub situation, how comfortable are we with our ability to put subs in if we have to have a teacher quarantine, and also a training for those subs about COVID responses as well, what they would have to do?
I can definitely speak to that. As you know, we were looking into working with a staffing group this year before the pandemic because there has been a shortage in subs. So getting subs during phase 5 when things are good is challenging. We have some of our best subs are retired staff. That group is typically, they're not anxious to get back into classrooms with students. They're in more of a high risk category.
Right.
So right now we've been managing the covering of classes with the ability to work remotely and with some of our ESP staff and with some of our certified staff and some reassigning. That was one of the surprises that a lot of districts noticed when we started the school year. One thought going in was, we're going to have all of these teaching assistants and, what are they going to be doing without students in the building? And there was worries of furloughs and things of that nature. And we've come to find out just how tremendously valuable they have been in this environment. So whether that's covering classes there, and again, Patty reaching out and strengthening our sub pool and providing trainings, but there are, and maybe this is what Robert was speaking to as well, even in these scenarios of steps 3, step 4, there are the realities that there could be situations where a student or a class could be moving to remote for some time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that fluid piece. I also want to just speak to the balancing of a step 3 to a step 4, just from a factual staffing piece. Once we add in lunch, I don't envision students in 2nd grade walking by themselves down the hall to the bathroom. So now we have to have very organized, we're going to the bathroom, we're going to wash our hands.
Mm-hmm.
Someone has to pass out the sack lunches to the classroom. Different types of movement breaks that can absorb some of the support staffing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the positive balance of that is if there are more students in class, then that support staff may not be needed as much to support some of the students that are remote or in person because of that piece. So that's some of we don't know until we live it. We have never lived that, but we're trying to identify where we would need those needs: subbing, supervision, and classroom support, without a doubt. And we will definitely post for extra positions, but there's a time frame that is required to go through our hiring process too. Not that it has to be a month long, but we still need to vet and hire and prepare our staff too.
Thanks, Ross.
This is Robert again. One of the discussions I've had with other board members here is just kind of, and what we talked about today with the timing and the issues with lunch, and maybe if we can keep our kids there longer. Maybe a question for Tom. With the other districts that are opening up, the ones that are nearby, are all of them just doing the 2 or 3 hours in the morning? Do we know? Are any doing 2-day full days? Or is it pretty similar to what we're doing here?
As far as I know, it is a variety of pieces. I believe District 15 currently is a full day, or along the lines of a full day. I believe what District 54 outlined, that they're looking for a full day. Again, I think everyone defines a full day very differently, just what it takes to get kids to school, into the building, and everything that goes with that. In other cases, I've seen local districts that they're looking at a half day perspective. within their rollout plan. My opinion from looking at that data that most are kind of staging in, that they've got grade levels coming on over time. In a lot of cases, it's part-time. District 25, I think, is looking at a 2-day hybrid to start things out. District 57, I believe the same. They're looking at a 2-day hybrid, an A and B group. 62, I don't believe so. I think they're looking at a 4-day. So people are in every different place. So I don't think there's a consistent piece.
Yeah. And I think that's hard, because I think a lot of the comments we get are that other districts are doing X, or other, Catholic schools are doing Y. And even, there was an article in the Daily Herald today, Mary and Jordan, they had a first grade class that's in person, and there's only 5 students in the class, a kindergarten class with 6 students max in the class, and I get each school is different. Each district's very different. We got to do what's best for our district here. I just wish, my personal opinion, I just wish we could extend the 4 hours a little longer, find an answer, solve for lunch. That would be my wish.
Can I get an indication as to how many people would like to see us try to get to full day? Randy, Courtney.
I just wanted one more question. One thing we didn't talk about, we were talking about the A and B days, and we'd be like a Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday.
Yeah.
One thing we didn't talk about, I know based on meals, we felt that was the best for the family meals, but did we consider, group A being a Monday, Tuesday, the group B Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, if we're worried about, deep cleaning and sanitation, and, kind of, have we really, I'm asking that question, are people fine with the Monday, Thursday, the Tuesday, Friday, or some people like the idea of a Monday, Tuesday, and a Thursday, Friday, and then we figure out maybe some way of getting meals to those families on a Friday or something like that to continue on that process.
Yeah, I had the same, this is Courtney, I had the same question of just thinking about the classroom and the touch points and the kids walking through and thinking, well, I like the idea of having the same set of kids in there Monday, Tuesday, do a deep cleaning, a new set of kids Thursday, Friday. So, that's my personal opinion. I understand Maureen's point about the lunches, and I would want to consider that too. But I guess personally, on balance, my preference would be the 2 simultaneous days of instruction.
And
I agree with you.
Yeah, I was wondering what that would look like, though, for kids that they had those 2 days, and then they've got all these days where they don't have it. So I wonder about how they're going to, go off track.
Yeah, you're correct. We discussed this, and there are pros and cons on both sides.
Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday are better.
Yeah, I think it's trade-offs for sure. Definitely from a cleaning perspective and same students, that's a benefit. There are trade-offs to each.
Robert was trying to speak, and he's been cut off several times. So
that's what I was wondering, if there was the benefit to the students of the continuous learning Monday, Tuesday, and also is there a benefit, not a benefit, but is it easier in the event of a positive case to do tracing if it's the same group of kids Monday, Tuesday?
I agree.
Well, if there's a way to solve the food problem, I prefer Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday as well because of that.
Yeah, because that's what I wonder, like with the food problem. I'm back on the food issue again, guys. I'm sorry, but the if they're going to take a snack break, they're going to have their mask off to eat the snacks. And if they are going to take a longer bus ride, they are going to have their lunch with them on the bus. And I know, they're supposed to have masks on the bus. I know there's rules on the bus. We've all ridden the bus, and, rules are broken on the bus, so I'm just afraid of, making all this effort to not feed them in the buildings, just to have them eating together on the bus ride home.
Right. So Janice, maybe we should start getting the pleasure of the board on some of these pieces, maybe queuing up some questions, whether it's 4 days, 2 days, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, because again, I think we could go on, debating the merits. And like I've said, we've been talking about this for 5 or 6 months. So we have had lengthy conversations about, all of these things. And you all make wonderful points, and they're all good points. But again, there are arguments on both sides, pros and cons on both sides for all of these topics. So perhaps we should just queue up some questions and see what the pleasure of the board is. So, one of the questions is the metrics. What degree of risk? We understand that even in the green, there's some low level of risk, but, what is the board comfortable with? Again, as you mentioned, Janice, if we're in that low risk category, then, we're green in one area and, basically red in the other. If we're in the moderate risk, which is that second area of yellow, in that case, we're in school, we're, technically in green in both. And then again, I want to emphasize that our mitigation strategies, that's the area that is really going to help address the level of risk. And then if kids are or staff do test positive, we have mitigation approaches in place for that. So, that's the first area. Which area of yellow are we comfortable with? And then I'd like the board to give us some direction on whether we're doing 4 days, moving from that step 3 directly to step 4, or if we're going to go step 2 with lunch. Those are the things where we could use some direction so we could start planning on those areas. It did sound like there was consensus from the board, though, that we try some practice, which I really like that idea of getting some volunteers, staff and students, trying some of the model strategies that we've discussed. But that would help if we could get some direction on the metric, and then also the number of days, lunch, et cetera.
I think, as far as the metrics, I think that the positivity rate is more important than the number of cases, but I do think they'll be represented eventually in that positivity rate. So I think that we should track them by zip code to some extent, just to be aware if we think there might be an increased risk in our schools. So for example, if 60018 goes to Rupley and Bird, then, maybe we make sure we step up our surveillance or something. So, to still not dismiss that, but to downplay it over some of the other factors. I don't know how other people feel.
Yeah, I would agree with that, the positivity rate, because at least we're looking at it as a percentage over X number of people that can then, switch
Right.
and slide over different populations versus cases where there's number of factors that go into play as far as cases go.
Agreed.
This is Chris Godlevich. I have a ton of confidence in the mitigation protocols that were presented. So with all the risks and the data that will flow as we see the facts, I'm entirely comfortable with the processes and recognize that there will be cases, procedures in place to minimize all those. I am entirely comfortable with moving to starting with a shorter 4-day, no lunch, tighten up all the protocols, procedures, get everybody transitioned into that. And then from there on forward, obviously the goal is to move to the more formal 5-day normalcy at some point, but I think it really sets us up to be equitable for the kids, for the staff, for the remote families, and also clearly giving an option to be back in school for those who want to be there.
I think I like your idea of Art to kind of get a straw poll where everyone's at. Do we want to kind of say, you asked your question, where do we stand? Then we kind of just give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down where we stand.
Yeah.
Is everything you like? One thing I do want to ask though, I like Chris's idea of, a shorter day and then maybe making the day longer. Ron, how does that impact the busing? If we, start with a shorter day and then go to a longer day, don't we share bus with other districts and stuff like that?
We do. That's something I'll talk to them about to make sure that they can acquiesce to our actions. I know that they do know that they're anticipating us starting, like we're saying, about a half day. So I'll have an answer tomorrow.
Okay.
We do anticipate, though, that if it's just a half day back to our normal day, because obviously they've run our normal routes in the past, that is doable. So unless it's something extremely different than what we've done in the past. We believe, we'll confirm tomorrow, but we believe that's doable. So a 4-hour day to a regular day, we think that that's doable. If it's a 4-hour day to an irregular day, that's something that probably would be a challenge. But
You know, I think it's good to get the board's interest in going with 2 days versus 4 days. But before we do that, I guess I'm interested in what Ann Wing might have to say about that. Can I put you on the spot, Ann? You're on mute.
I think being part of all these different planning committees, I understand that this is difficult for parents. And I've talked to parents about this as well. I guess our concern is how quickly we can move to do all of that. I don't want to do, as Patty said, I don't want to do this and then we have issues because we move too quickly. And I felt comfortable with the plan that we had, even though it's not ideal. I mean, none of this is ideal, but that's kind of how we felt, that it was kind of easing into the situation. And then we can try to work out some of these things like lunches and get people comfortable with what the expectation was, because it is a lot for the teachers and for the students. It's a lot for everyone. We get it.
Thank you. You know, and listening to everybody, I'm inclined to say, let's go with the plan as presented with some trial, as much as information we get beforehand, and see how that goes. And then, you know, as we continue to watch the metrics, I'm with Chris that maybe we should just go ahead and with what Randy said is open it up more if the data warrants it.
Yeah, Janice, I'm just going to jump in and agree with you on that. I think given all the considerations in balance, I like the idea of phasing in gradually. I think my only personal request, and you all can tell me if it's the pleasure of the board, but I think my personal request would be that in tandem with starting to phase this out, we really aggressively try to get creative about how we handle lunch. Because to me, I want to get to a point where we're addressing those parents who need their kids at school full day. So I think we can't wait if any further. And I'm not saying we have, I know we've been actively working, but I just think we need to start gathering information. How are our neighboring districts doing this safely? So that we can ideally go from 2 days to 4 days to 4 days with lunch, like in close succession.
I'd agree with that. If the data indicates that we can support that and other districts are doing all right with it.
And just to give my 2 cents, I agree with Ann in a sense of, I don't want to shock the system. There's a lot of new processes and procedures that are going to be in place. Dr. Ossel's talking about everything with certification and symptom checking and everything and the process for picking up and dropping off, the whole works, everything's going to be brand new. We don't want to shock the system with overloading. And let's see what works. Let's see what doesn't work. Let's expand and grow on that and slowly roll it out. But that's my opinion.
Okay, so can I get a show of hands as to how many people would like to?
Agree with that.
Okay, so Mardell, Courtney, Robert.
Hold on. I think the one thing, one thing we did discuss was a 2-day, you know, when we start this whole phase out, are we going to do an Monday, Tuesday, or a Thursday, Friday, or a Monday, Thursday? I think a lot of people were torn on that one. I think that's one thing where we kind of need to iron that out. And other than that, I think it sounds like the plan that, you know, the team has come up with, basically everybody's agreeing with.
Yeah.
With a small minor modification. I think that's something we need to discuss.
yeah, I would suggest that you allow our plan teams to figure that out, Randy. They've spent a lot of time talking on both sides of what's best. And teachers and administrators are on those plan teams that are making those decisions.
Well, that's true, but I mean, it seems like the board really is weighing towards Monday, Tuesday, and then Thursday, Friday. So I think that should be factored in.
I actually like the original.
Okay.
I mean, that's my 2 cents.
So
Chris Levy chair, I go with the fabulous 4 vote, but just to share.
Yeah, not a surprise, Chris. And I understand it too. I get that. So are we okay letting the plan team decide which days, or do we want to, you're okay with that? Okay.
I'm fine with that.
All right. We have enough people that are fine with that.
I'm all right with it.
I'm good with that.
Okay with me.
All right, so that's a majority, so we'll leave it up to the plan team. You guys have done such an amazing job. I am just
And I can revisit that with the team. I can bring that up, saying there are questions again. Let's just revisit that and make sure that our reasoning is clear.
Thank you.
And then if I could just jump in, so I'm hearing at least 2 board members said we should focus on the positivity rate in regards to the metrics as the key metric.
Yeah, that's what I said.
But I think we need to watch the other, as I said.
No, I totally understand that piece, but
especially with concentrations coming to specific schools and areas that are showing, an elevated risk. I mean, they're in the red zone. So, we should be watching, surveilling those kids a little more closely just to, see if we can catch and mitigate any possible risk before we have a problem.
got it. I just wanted to confirm.
Yes.
So Tom, looking at this slide, then step 4 would be 5.0 to 6.4.
Yeah, that's what we had come up with. Yes, that we would say up to 6.4.
Okay.
Well, and we're already at step 5. I mean, we're less than the highest is 4.07 in Elk Grove. So we're tracking pretty well.
So what is our
We have to see
current
what's gonna
positivity
happen
rate?
after the kids come.
The positivity rate for the entire district is 3.53%, and the range is from 4.07% in Elk Grove Village down to 3.03 in Arlington Heights. So our positivity rate is really good. It's just that rising new cases that, we need to keep an eye on, because I think it's going to be a harbinger of what we may be faced with. If we don't pay attention, we may be, surprised in a way we'd rather not be.
Okay. So we're good on those 2 pieces. The other pieces then, Janice and board members, we'll want to start working on a timeline, because as Chris just pointed out, our positivity rates are in good shape, to be in this 4.5. On the other hand, as Janice has pointed out, our cases per 100,000, that's still a little high. So, we're in the step 3, step 4 range. We'll need to work out a timeline and start talking about transition. We know what our initial move will be, but Ron will work with the bus company and talk through what that piece will look like, and the food service piece might look like. So we may be in a natural progression, through December, and again, January, when we return from winter break, that provides a nice opportunity for some movement as well. So we'll work on a draft of a timeline and share that with the board in this Friday's weekly update, and then you guys can react to that.
Yeah, I think we want to put that out as soon as possible with parents, recognizing that there may be other things that happen that are out of our control, but this is what we're aiming for. So
Okay.
I think
Well, if we have it earlier, I'll share it earlier then.
Okay, that'd be great.
Ron's very good, and he has the ear of our transportation companies and our food services, and they respond quickly to him. So as soon as I get that information, we'll put a timeline together and share with the board and also with the DEA so that they can react to it as well.
Ron is a real awesome catch. Good job, Art. Thank you, Ron, for coming here.
Thank you.
So that would conclude this portion of the presentation for the return to in-person, unless there are any other questions that the board might have.
No, I think you guys did a great job. I'm really impressed, and I'm really pleased, and I realize that we're not going to make everyone happy. It's tough, but I think you guys have done a fabulous job, and I really am grateful, and thank you to all of you for everything that you've done.
I know that we're getting late in the evening, and we have some important action items. Do we want to tackle the strategic planning piece, or do you want, or could I convince the board to perhaps push that to another meeting?
I would.
What time is it? Yes, push it off.
You can push it. I'm in agreement.
Can, maybe on to the next board
That was
meeting?
easy. That was
Nope,
easy.
I like to hang here, please.
And they still have to listen to me read a whole bunch more letters. So, you know, you guys are still on the hook for a little while, but yeah, so let's go to our action items then. Could you please bring up the agenda again? I was looking at your copy because I can't find mine. Too many windows open. Okay, so let's go to action item 7.01, the approval of the 2020 tax levy and setting a date. Do we have a motion, please?
Hang on, I gotta get there.
Tell me about it. I lost my agenda somewhere. Too many windows open.
Okay. Motion by who?
I'll make it. Hold on, let's get it open. So I'll make the motion. Be it resolved on the 28th day of September 2020, the Community Consolidated School District 59 Board of Education directs the administration to prepare the 2020 levy. Be it resolved that the Board of Education conduct a public hearing on the proposed tax levy during the November 9th, 2020 school board meeting, and notification of said hearing be circulated in an area newspaper announcing the public hearing. And that's Randy Reed.
Okay, Randy Reed, do we have a second?
Mardell seconds it.
Thank you, Mardell. Roll call, please.
All right, where am I at? Lang,
Aye.
Mancia, Robert,
Aye.
Petrielli, aye. Reed,
Aye.
Schumacher,
Aye.
Prinsky,
Aye.
and Garlevich.
Aye.
Man, you're getting
Motion passes.
Thank you. I like how you say his name. I got to work on that myself.
I keep listening to him. That's
Yeah,
all,
right.
trying to improve.
I know. He says it so well himself. Okay. Up to action item 7.02. Do we have a motion?
Nobody wants to read it? All right, fine. Patty,
Okay, you'll make a motion?
yes. Be it resolved that on the 28th day of September 2020, the Community Consolidated School District 59 Board of Education approves the attached amendment to the Phase 2 agreement between Control Technology and Solutions LLC and Community Consolidated School District number 59 as presented.
Do we have a second?
I'll second. It's Courtney.
All right.
Is there anybody question what this work is, what this actually work is?
Did you want to address that, Randy? Because I know you were concerned about transparency. So if you wish to say a few words about it, that would be great.
So basically what this $1.3 million is really two things that we've added to the scope of the project for phase 2. The biggest portion of it would be univents. The univents are actually, so Ron, you should be doing the talking. Everyone seems to like you better than me anyways.
Okay, Ron, take it away.
We had, to be real simple, we had 2 sites that already had univents that were being updated. We wanted to make sure that everything was uniform so that the district could make sure that we were being efficient and that all 4 buildings that require univents had the same type of univents.
And our univents are?
So you're talking about like the heating and cooling, HVAC, but the work's not just univents. It's a combination of a lot of things that we've had on site that is already being done by CTS under contract. So it gives us the best possible price.
But it's vents that go into individual classrooms, correct? And then it includes filtration.
Yes, it does.
Mm-hmm. So that's a real plus to get our systems as running as cleanly as possible and as effectively as possible.
I'd just like to add that the CDC did mention something about filtration and the importance of it in the last week or two, and we've been on that for the last couple of months. So kudos to everybody involved. Yep.
We're in good shape as far as that goes. Randy, did you want to add anything?
And the reason why this is not going out to bid is because it does qualify as a health, life, safety part of the project. And in addition to that is we already have CTS in the buildings. So if we were to contract this out or to send this out to bid, the cost will be significantly more. We already have the CTS employees that are working in our schools at that time with project managers, with their different people there, that we're just basically in charge for the labor and the installation of the vents. We won't have extra, there will not be extra engineering costs. There will not be extra, basically engineering costs associated with it, which we think was an estimated savings around $700,000 or so.
And control programming costs too.
Yeah.
Right, there you go. And then energy savings is a reason we can do that as well. And so I anticipate something from Commonwealth Edison down the line as a rebate.
Great.
Are those brand new, are the systems, I'm remembering my classroom, are the systems that are in the classrooms, are those new with these vents, or is it the same?
That's what we're replacing, those systems in the classrooms.
Okay, cool, because mine was really noisy.
Yeah, and basically what it allows us to do is it basically allows us to control the air in the room much better.
Oh, I like that.
So
And they're much quieter too, Patty. I was in bird school the other day, and their new HVAC system, you couldn't even hear it. It was, and the building principal had shared and commented the same thing.
Right.
It's so much quieter.
Oh, that's nice. I like
That's
that.
great. The last point I want to make, Randy and Ron, is that CTS, who's done all this work over the summer for all these health, life, safety projects and others, has done really quality work, because our people are making sure that they're doing the work to the level that we expect them to. And they have saved us millions of dollars. And so we're quite comfortable extending the contract to get the better price when we know we don't have to pay the engineering costs to go out to bid, and that they have really done good work for us. So it's a win-win for us and for them. So let's, without any other comments, why don't we have roll call then, please?
Okay. Mancia.
Aye.
Petrielli, aye. Reed?
Aye.
Schumacher?
Aye.
Krinsky?
Aye.
Dorlevich?
Aye.
And Lang?
Aye.
And the motion passes.
All right, okay, and here we are. So we would be ready to adjourn, but unfortunately right now I have to finish reading these. I mean, I'm happy to read them. I'm glad people are concerned and they're contacting us. So it's going to take a little longer. Plus I received a number of comments that I need to read, because I don't think everybody understood that we were starting at 5:30. So anything that came in before our normal start time, I'm going to read as well. If they said that they were sending them from public comment, which I don't think most of them are. Okay.
Janice, before you begin, I've got a report to the board about going on the tour the other day. Can I give that first before you do your?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Albert and I had intended to make a trip to the Elk Grove schools, and it was suggested that others could join us. And so Ron and Randy Reed joined us at Salt Creek School. And from there, we went to Grove School. At each of the schools that we attended, either the principal or the assistant principals or even some custodians joined us on our trip around the schools. And we did see all the teachers were in their school classrooms as far as we could tell. And some of the teachers were working with students. Usually it was the special ed students, but there were some students in the schools. So we already have started in school teaching. Albert was particularly interested in looking to see that each of the schools had received and installed the no hands sanitizing stations that are in each of the schools, and they are worked by the feet. And that was a really big deal, because the children could not even use their hands at all, except to wash their hands with the sanitation liquid. Also, some of the schools had started putting signs up, blue signs on the doors after the classroom had been sanitized, to let everybody know that this room was ready for other students, or don't go in there because it's sanitized for the following day. And Albert is working very hard to make sure that every school gets all the necessary signs put up in their schools. Everybody was very happy to see us. Unfortunately, Ron and Randy had to leave us and go back to work after the first 2 schools. And so Albert and I continued on to Ridge, which was our original plan, because the Park District in Elk Grove wants to put in new equipment in the playgrounds at Ridge Family Center. So we went and actually talked with the lady from the Park District while we were walking around with the principal, Rob, and we found out that the problem is that that land in the back, although there's loads of land in back of Ridge School, is quite low in areas, and the land beneath the primary children's playground is rotting out the playground. And it's also been there 10 years, so it's time for a renewal. However, the swing set was put in within probably 5 years ago, so that will not have to be replaced. Where they want to move it is over to the area where the upper level children have a playground.
Mardell, excuse me, if you could shorten that up just a little bit, because I'm concerned about time.
Okay, I'll shorten it. I'm almost finished. At any rate, we looked around and we looked at all the feasibilities, and we're going back with the lady from the Park District this week, and we'll have Albert come back and give you a complete report on it after we finish up. But we are in the midst of working on it, and that is the reason it has to be done, because it's a swampy area there.
Yeah, okay. If Art agrees with Albert doing that work for us and reporting back, that would be great. It'd be nice to see it in the weekly. Thank you so much for going and reporting, and I'm glad to hear about the safety measures and, you know, knowing that Albert is on the job and making sure that everything's safe and being done the way it needs to be. We're really lucky to have Albert as well. Please.
And let me finish. We then continued over, and this is very quick. We then continued over to the other side of the district. We went to Holmes, the junior high, we went to the preschool, and we went to Forest View School, and we were well received in all schools, and everybody was doing a fine job in their classrooms. That's it.
Good. Thank you very much. Thank you for representing the board. Any other reports or comments before I get to finish reading the public comments? Okay, seeing none. This one is from John L. Hello, board members. I want to ask that as we prepare to return back to school, which is our kids desperately need, and the parents need to be able to have this option, we consider every way possible to make this challenging time work for most working parents. The thought of the hybrid option complicates everything for working parents, and our students need to be in class now full weeks. I encourage you to find ways to work around challenges regarding food consumption. Parentheses, it's doable. We are seeing it at many other schools, close paren. But most importantly, here are some needs for the families. 1, full week, 5 days in school in person. Doing a couple days and spread out will make it impossible for us to find childcare, especially if it's not days together. For example, Monday and Tuesday works better than Monday and Wednesday. If our classroom sizes can accommodate this, we need to do it. And that is what I heard on the last board meeting. Do not split up the in-person class. These kids need to be together. Help teachers succeed. Shuffle around the kids now into either remote academy and in-person groups. Even if children get new teachers, which everyone can live with, and the kids will do just fine, we need to do it now. I am looking forward to what the board and leadership team can come up with to make this a thriving year. John, parent of 2nd grade student at Brentwood. Okay, this one's from Nicole Hain. Good morning, Ms. Krinsky and Mrs. Pullen. Thank you for sharing this tonight during the board meeting and with the other board members. Nicole Hain. What is remote learning? Remote learning is 1, positive daily interactions with the teacher and peers. 2, learning how to read and use a daily schedule. 3, learning executive function skills like organizing a workspace and school materials. 4, completing daily instruction and assignments and receiving teacher feedback. 5, daily social and emotional instruction that foster and supportive relationships. 6, participating daily in specials classes like physical education, art, music, and the Learning Resource Center. 7, increasing the health and safety of our children. Remote learning is the best we can do during a pandemic. Thank you to our staff and school board for all of their hard work and dedication during this once-in-a-lifetime crisis. Signed, Nicole Hain. Okay, this one's from Robert Nauman. Ms. Krinsky et al. It has come to my attention that the board is discussing reopening plans and options at this evening's board meeting. Please feel free to read this statement with respect to my strong support for returning to in-person instruction. I may not be able to attend the meeting this evening due to prior commitment. As you may recall, my wife, Michelle, recently sent a note advocating for in-person instruction as well. Although I certainly support her points about minimizing distraction, accommodating the work-life arrangements of district families and teachers, and the grave health impacts of student isolation, I wish also to raise a couple of additional points, which, as it turns out, were touched on in your response to Michelle. First, I am personally aware of parents and teachers in numerous districts across the suburbs whose children have returned or are now returning to full or hybrid in-person instruction. These include, for example, Palatine District 15, Glendale Heights District 16, and Itasca District 10, as well as schools in more distant districts such as LaGrange, Huntley, and Crystal Lake. In addition, there are public reports of other districts doing the same, such as Glenview District 34, Batavia District 101, and Oak Park District 97. All of these schools are subject to guidance from the same Illinois regulators, including the State Board of Education and the Department of Public Health, and they have made or are making in-person education work. Second, while no one disputes the importance of the health of our students, faculty, and staff, it should be noted that there is very, very little evidence of any significant spread of COVID-19 in schools at the elementary or even high school level among those schools that are currently open nationwide. Moreover, rather than merely analyzing a flat statistic such as cases per 100,000 in a geographic area, the board should take into account that the nature of this virus is disproportionately to impact populations at substantially higher ages than the students served by the board, according to data published by the Department of Public Health. In general, the data also seem to indicate that among populations of all ages, the risk to any person is greater if they have existing health issues. A population of young and generally healthy students appears to face a substantially diminished risk from the virus compared to the general population. Statistics such as cases per 100,000 will therefore not be particularly useful in assessing next steps. We can all understand that in the absence of information earlier in the year, the board chose to proceed with caution. However, as you indicated that the board already agrees that in-person schooling is best, and in light of the information we now have, the board should proceed toward in-person education for all students with all haste. If there are still parents with serious concerns about in-person instruction, then some accommodation should of course be made for those families. Finally, as the board is a representative body, I would urge the board to reverse its decision about direct communication between board members and their constituents, as well as any limits on public comment at public board meetings. The board's primary role is not the direct instruction of students, but providing top-level guidance to the administration from the community, and more importantly, maintaining the accountability of the administration to the community. In view of that, very few board functions should be deemed more important than interfacing with constituents. Okay, the next one is from Eva Zacharias. Dear board members, she has a different name in the text. Dear Ever Polished, a mom of 2 children, one supposes to attend Ridge Family Center for Learning kindergarten. I would like to express my concerns regarding remote learning. Since she was 60 months old, she was attending daycare. Gabriella just turned 5 in July. She is missing her friends, now new ones, communication in person, new classmates, new teachers, new building. She was so happy to start kindergarten. Now she doesn't understand the online learning concept because she previously attended daycare in person. Stephen, stop, you're typing too loud. Sorry, my husband's over there typing and it's distracting me. Okay, now she doesn't understand the online learning concept because she previously attended daycare in person. Especially her little sister attends daycare 5 days a week now, and she needs to stay home. It's very difficult for a 5-year-old girl to concentrate in front of the screen. I don't understand why park districts are open with fee, daycares, and other schools in the neighborhood, and we still remain online. Hopefully our voices, our kids' voices, will be heard and will make a change. Please use the power and let our children come back to school. Thank you. This one's from Karen Davidson. Dear Dr. Fessler and board members, I want to take this opportunity to say how well remote learning has been going for my 8th grader. At the junior high level, classes have been relatively seamless. Learning proceeds as it would have in person. Small groups meet in breakout rooms. Large set lessons are taught in the full group setting. Homework and in-class work are completed and graded. The block schedule is finally understood and flows well. Starting at 9 a.m. and having 40-minute lunch is highly valued by the teens. Socializing is done in large groups while playing video games and chatting on Discord, then getting together at the park after school. As we start to discuss transitions, I was part of the parent curriculum committee asked to weigh in on the new plan, so I've had a little time to process it. As proposed in phase 2, students will return to school 2 days per week for 4 hours per day, be sent home with lunch, and then we'll have asynchronous time in the afternoons. Grade levels will be phased in with 4th, 5th, and 8th returning last, and daily start times will return to pre-COVID timing to allow for bus routes. In my opinion, I see zero advantage for 8th grade to return to school on this hybrid model on November 23rd, which is the week of Thanksgiving anyway. First, they will spend exactly 7 days in school before winter break and 14 total days before the end of the second quarter. And they will attend each class for half of that time due to the block schedule. Second, they will actually get less instructional time with their teachers than they do now. Third, 4 hours is a long time to go without eating. I know there is a snack plan in elementary, not sure about junior high. Fourth, it is going to be very challenging for the teachers to manage half a classroom full of kids in person with masks on while wearing a mask and manage another half class of kids on Zoom. Time will be lost trying to get everything up and running each period. I know we are investing in technology to make this better, but I fail to see how it is worth investing all these resources to have in-person learning for 8 hours per week in the heart of cold and flu season. Fifth, managing the alternating block schedule. Did someone say something? Okay. Fifth, managing the alternating block schedule days with the alternating hybrid days sounds like a recipe for disaster. None of this even takes into account the required parent certifications of health, kids who still show up with symptoms, quarantining, cleaning, risks to staff, etc. As I understand it, parents will have the option to choose in-person or remote with the new schedule. For junior high, at least, I strongly encourage the administration to include a question on the survey that offers the option to stick with the current remote learning schedule and not return to in-person learning until the next phase. I also hope that metrics will be defined to delineate what has to be met to move between phases. Thank you for your consideration and again for making the safe choice for our families and staff. Sincerely, Karen Davidson. This one's from Amy Toucher. As the district comes upon evaluating current data for return to in-person learning in some capacity, I'd like to share my concerns. First, returning to any type of in-person learning is a huge undertaking, not impossible, but a challenge based on protocols, recommendations, and positivity rates constantly fluctuating. Is this board prepared to do what is right and back a decision based on data and not parental pressure? Depending on the district's plan to remain in remote learning through first semester or return to some type of hybrid learning option will not only affect the students and staff, but their families and most of all the community. I believe District 59 and some parents have forgotten about collective responsibility. This is about community outbreak and keeping others who are at risk safe, e.g. grandparents, teachers, etc., and not overburdening our doctor's offices and hospitals when schools require students who have the sniffles to go home and isolate and or get COVID tested. The board made a poor decision when they required teachers to go into the building to teach alone from a classroom when the same could be done from teachers' homes and it would lessen the risk of your employees getting sick. I am concerned that the board will make the same poor decisions when it comes to opening schools for in-person learning due to the pressures of parents who have become so fixated on what is best for their child or children, or how remote learning has inconvenienced them and not thinking about what is good for the whole, as well as our children. As we tell our children, make good decisions. Amy Toucher, parent of daughters who attend Grove. Okay, this one's from Joanna Yaron. Dear Board of Education members, my name is, actually she has a different name in the text. My name is Johanna Kvass, mother of 2 children attending Claremont Elementary School. They are in 1st and 2nd grade. As our states continue to reopen, for example, restaurants are expanding their indoor capacities, retail stores extending shopping, let alone protests being held all over the city. My children were forced to stay home. It was a mandatory lockdown for them, forcing them into remote learning. I have sent out several emails with my statements on how badly it affects my children, the negative impact on their social skills, educational differences between their peers, not to mention the effect on their health. My son's eyesight worsened due to prolonged screen hours, resulting in several visits to eye doctor and costs associated with glasses. For years, generations have been dealing with viruses and associated diseases. Every year, we are dealing with the flu outbreaks, which complications kill thousands of people, yet we are functioning without any lockdowns or restrictions. In this situation, we were not given a chance to make a decision to either send children to school or attend remote learning. As a mother, I would like my children to return for class instruction. I'm also aware of parents who are afraid and prefer online learning, and I do respect their decision. But what about my voice? I believe everyone should be heard. Therefore, schools should be open for in-class instruction as well as online learning at the same time. Parents should be given a choice. Thank you. Okay. This one's from Violetta Grochola. As a parent of a student in District 59, I want to voice my strong objections to e-learning. In a short time, we have participated in e-learning. It has proved to be a substandard way